So it is 8:07 a.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Santa Monica Groundwater Sustainability Agency meeting for January 17th, 2024. Roll call is Chair Wang.
Present.
Vice Chair Natoli.
Here.
Board Member Jesus Gonzalez. He is absent. Board Member Sean Singletary.
Present.
And Board Member Robert Welsh.
Here.
Thank you. So we do have a quorum. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Do we want to put a flag up, or do we want to just look out the window?
There. It's on the board there.
That's great one.
Go for it, Chair.
All right.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Again, we have determined that there is a quorum. The next item on our agenda is a closed session. So at this time, we will close the open portion of the meeting and go into closed session.
One, close it.
Sorry, just a second. So it is 8:39. We are back into the public session. Next item on our agenda is item number 5, disclosure of ex parte communications. I would also like to note that board member Gonzalez has joined us.
Just real quick on the closed session, we don't have any reportable actions that was taken during
Great.
the closed session.
Thank you, Chair. Would we like to go through ex parte? Yes, Vice Chair Natoli.
Yes, I received 2 emails from a member of the public, John Davis, relating to the legal status of the GSA. As is my usual practice, I did not reply.
Thank you. Any other items to disclose from any board members?
It's still the same 2 emails also received from Mr. Jonathan Davis as well, but did not reply.
Great, thank you. Just a note that we do
I
have
believe
folks.
Director
Oh, I'm
Welch.
sorry, go ahead.
Also the same.
Thank you.
2 emails.
Just a note, we do have folks joining online, and if we could disclose our names before speaking, that would be helpful for the notation. Thank you. Okay, next item is consent items, and that's approval of the meeting minutes from the October 18th, 2023 meeting. Do we have any comments, questions, revisions? Yes, Vice Chair Natoli.
I have a couple of comments. This is Vice Chair Natoli. Under the closed session, item 4, I believe we should note that there was no reportable action. That was it.
Thank you.
I had a quick correction.
I'm sorry, if you could just state your name. I'm
Sorry,
very
Sean
sorry.
Singletary, Culver City. Item 9C, in the motion, my last name was spelled incorrectly.
Thank you very much.
I think it's page 5.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other items? Yes.
Rob Welch, City of Beverly Hills, item 9A. I just wanted to clarify cost share based on jurisdictional area within the subbasin, or 2% of all costs. So I just wanted to make sure that it was stated the City of Beverly Hills was provided direction from City Council of 2% of all costs.
Thank you very much. Are there any other items for amendment? Yes.
This is Chair Wang with City of Santa Monica. Just to clarify, I think what Director Welch was saying is that 2% of cost was the administrative cost, right? All administrative costs, wasn't all costs with the, because there's also implementation of projects. I think what we were discussing was solely on the administrative costs.
And our direction was all costs.
Oh, it's all costs.
All
including
costs.
this one. Okay.
All costs.
Thank you, directors. Any other comments or amendments for the meeting minutes? Okay, may I have a motion to approve as amended?
Vice Chair Natoli moved.
Rob Welch, second.
Thank you very much. Roll call vote. Chair Wang,
Yes?
Board Member Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Singletary,
Yes.
Board Member Welsh,
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Again, this is public forum, and this is utilized for items not on the agenda. It's my understanding that we do have folks who are speaking in public forum. I will take first Mr. John Davis. Mr. Davis, I will allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself. You will have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Yes. First of all, I had signed up to speak on item 6. So now I will speak on item 7 since I was disallowed from item 6. Pursuant to section 1360 of the California Government Code, each officer here is required to take and subscribe the oath of affirmation set forth in section 3 of Article 20 of the California Constitution. That reads in relevant part, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the state of California, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the state of California, that I will take this obligation without purpose of evasion, emphasis added, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties which I am about to enter. End of oath. Full compliance with the Brown Act is your constitutional duty. As you know, Lizette Gold announced to the public this group would not abide by the Constitution through non-compliance with the Brown Act Section 54953 and 54953.3, which reads in part, a member of the public shall not be required as a condition to attendance at a meeting of a local agency to register his or her name to fulfill any condition precedent to his or her attendance. Lizette Gold's meeting announcement states in part that members of the public attending by teleconference are required as a condition of their attendance to submit a speaking request via email to Lizette Gold by the day before the meeting. And your name must be included in the email or the comment will not be added to the speaker list. The question for each officer relative to this meeting is, are you upholding your sacred oath of office? Are you bearing true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the state of California? Are you well and faithfully discharging your duties upon which you have entered? Are you evading your sacred oath to uphold the state constitution? Your actions today will resolve these questions with the people of California watching. Finish.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Ms. McPherson, you are the next person to speak. I have asked you to unmute. You have 3 minutes on the clock.
Hi, this is Patricia McPherson. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, thank you. Public comment for, in particular, I would like to see adherence by this group to Water Code 10723.6 to have a legally binding agreement for this group to function. I think it was quite apparent at the last meeting that when people kept saying, I received an email from this person, I didn't receive it, Lizette Gold got it, oh, I didn't get it, that even amongst yourself shows that there is an issue with coordinating the information that is going in and out and between everyone, including the public here, which I have asked to have things sent to all of you through the Secretary, Lizette Gold, and she has sent back emails saying that she will not do that, that I have to send it all out myself individually. So there are issues. Additionally, the Brown Act. I was told in the chat box that there was no need to adhere to the Brown Act by this body. Well, it either adheres to the state, I believe, or to the local act with regard to public meetings. I was refused to allow to be speaking last time when I wanted to speak with regard to the Hillcrest golf courses and the volumes of water being discharged, and I was refused. I was refused by Dudek, the company that is hired by this group. And in watching the replay of this meeting, there's no showing that I was trying to speak. So there's just a concealment going on with this group with regard to public comment. It's become very difficult also to even figure out how to get into these meetings. The other thing is public comment with regard to the ability of this group. This body is supposed to be, the policy is to protect the fresh water of the area. At Bionah Wetlands, there are flap gates that are broken that have been allowing a great deal of saltwater intrusion into areas that are predominantly fresh water. There
Ms.
are
McPherson,
trees
you
that are
have
at stake.
39 seconds.
Thank you. And we would like to see you comment with the agency in charge of that, which would be the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. You have the ability to comment on that, make inquiry. We're asking you to do so, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other public comment requests at this time.
Is there any in the room? No.
I do not have any speaker cards for this item. This is public forum. So we can move on to informational items.
I was just gonna ask the directors up there, is anyone who propose any agenda management on the items we have?
Rob Welch, City of Beverly Hills. I would like to make a motion to move the Hillcrest item up to be heard first on the agenda.
So that was item 9B.
9B, correct.
And would that be, instead of going to 8A, we would start with 9B?
Correct.
Is that okay with all of the directors?
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Gonzalez, DWB, second.
Okay, I will take a roll call vote. Thank you for that motion and second. Director Welsh,
Yes.
Director Singletary,
Yes.
Director Gonzalez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli,
Aye.
Chair Wang.
Yes. Right, so the agenda will start with 9B and then we'll follow the rest of the agenda items in order.
Oh, 9B.
Could you mute, please? Patricia.
All right, so I don't call item.
Yes.
So 9B is the motion for reconsideration for the Hillcrest Country Club well application. So I'll motion to reconsider whether Hillcrest Country Club's proposed well are not inconsistent with the groundwater sustainability plan.
Before there's any discussion?
No, I think we have the motion for that item to be heard again. I think that was, and then it goes into discussion, just so we were hearing the item.
Is there a second for the motion?
Second, Rob Welch, Beverly Hills.
Okay. Thank you. There's a motion and a second on the table. I will take a roll call vote. Director Welsh,
Yes.
Director Singletary,
Yes.
Director Gonzalez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli,
Aye.
Chair Wang.
Yes. All right, so now we're gonna begin rehearing the item, I guess we'll start with discussion, right? Because there's no presentation by staff on that, right? By GSA consultants, sorry, not staff. We'll begin discussion amongst the board on that item for the reconsideration. I guess I'll start. Very good.
Chair Wang, when would you like public comment on this as well?
Do you want to discuss first?
I guess,
I mean, normally there's board discussion
Yeah.
and then we open it up to public comment. So I'm presuming that you have a board discussion.
yeah, so we'll have the discussion first and then public comments. In the discussion, there may be clarifying questions for Hillcrest Country Club here as well. So the reconsideration item is to revisit the item on the proposed additional groundwater pumping from Hillcrest Country Club. Just to recap, the Country Club currently has 3 existing wells. What they're proposing is adding 2 additional wells. The existing pumping is about 215 acre-feet per year. The additional extraction for the 2 new wells, it's estimated about 210 acre-feet a year. So essentially doubling the pumping that's currently there. There was the discussion last time was there's the level of uncertainty with the model on the impact of that pumping on the groundwater basin, and the board were discussing conditions to make sure that we eliminate some of those uncertainty and able to manage our basin sustainably and also to protect our groundwater basin. So today we'll discuss some of the, I guess, the item if any directors has concerns, or we can discuss conditions that we want to see in order for us to make sure we're managing the basin properly. So is there any questions or comments from any other board members up here? No? I guess so.
Chair Wang, you have some conditions you'd like to see?
Correct. So I'll start as well. I was hoping you guys would jump in with others, but I'll keep going. So some of the conditions that we would propose, or at least I'm proposing from the Hillcrest Country Club for us to find that it is consistent with the GSP is a couple conditions. First one is with what was proposed. It is our understanding that the extraction will be approximately 425 acre-feet per year from both the existing wells and the new wells. And what I would propose that we would monitor and cap that at 425. It is my understanding that with the new turf that's put in, that it will use less water over time, so that you should not use more than 425 acre feet per year. So through your annual reporting and such, we want to make sure that you are not exceeding that number. The second one will be then, obviously, to support that, you would need to monitor the flow from each well, from both the existing and the new wells, to be able to report how much you're pumping, so that you can prove that you are staying underneath the 425 acre feet per year cap. Third condition would be, this is what we had talked about last time, is like, how do we ensure that the additional pumping is not having adverse impact on our groundwater basin due to the lack of monitoring capabilities currently in that region of our basin? And how do we eliminate and take out that error? And that third condition, I would propose two different options. First one is you could install 3 dedicated monitoring wells around your well field to monitor groundwater elevations as industry best practice, and also defined by DWR as best practices. So that would be the first option, is to install 3 dedicated monitoring wells. Second option is to install transducer data loggers within your existing production wells. So you would set it at a certain level as you model, that you will not draw down past that water level to make sure that your water level doesn't go beneath that. And if it does, then you would have to stop pumping from that well until the water level is able to recover. And that would go hand in hand with the production data flow meter, so we could monitor in real time with that. So both the water elevation and the pumping from each well will be collected, reported to GSA quarterly, and then there will be an annual report. In the annual report, the GSA board here would encourage other items to be included in addition to just reporting the data that you're staying underneath the 425 acre feet per year, and also you're not impacting the groundwater basin. We would also encourage items such as efforts on Hillcrest to reduce water use, improve water efficiency, such as drought tolerant landscaping, if there's plans for that. Any proposals to look at groundwater recharge to help sustain that additional groundwater pumping, maintenance, replacement, O&M of your operations to make sure your system working efficiently, recycle water options. So those are a couple of thoughts that we would encourage you to include in your annual reporting to really go along with the statement you have made to be environmental friendly, reduce your water use, et cetera, in the annual reporting. So we strongly encourage you guys to include that in your annual reporting as well. Is there anything that other board members would like to add?
This is Vice Chair Natoli. I would like to echo the chair's mention of specifically the landscape plan for drought tolerant landscaping. I don't think we're thinking about, of course, the area in play, or maybe any mature trees other than eucalyptus, which nobody likes. But drought tolerant landscaping for the rest of the property, and the groundwater recharge program that you'd mentioned you'd be looking into doing, that could be helpful. Every little bit helps. Every little bit we can put back into the ground helps overall. And the maintenance replacement schedule, just something to ensure that the infrastructure is operating properly and we're not Colorado aqueduct to the Imperial Valley that loses how much water from leakage. So something like that, I think I would echo the chair's recommendations for those 3 items, in addition to the 3 conditions that Santa Monica had already mentioned.
Any other?
Chair Wang, the
Yes.
only thing I would add, thank you for describing those conditions. First off, this is Hillcrest being a DWP customer, it's exactly in the spirit of what we would like to see as far as one of our customers saving and conserving water, potable water specifically. That being said, one of the conditions that you described, including the collection of data with these data loggers, how often do you foresee Hillcrest being responsible for collecting the data and reporting back to the GSA to avoid any adverse impacts to the basin?
Yeah, so I think for the data logger, for that, you would set, essentially once installed, it could collect data, you could set it at frequencies of 30 minutes, an hour, but they should be collected daily, right? And that data will be reported to us quarterly. Any other discussion, board? So we go to public comment.
We will take public comment at this time. Per the protocol, we are taking public comment first from folks who are in the room, and then secondly from people who are online. So the first person I have is Mr. Chris Wessel. You will have,
Thanks. I know
3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, Chris Wessel, consultant Geosyntech Consultants for Hillcrest Country Club. I'm really just here to answer questions, so I don't have any specific comments at this time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Neil Brower. Is this the,
Also just here to answer questions.
okay. I'm presuming it's the same for everybody, but I'm going to read these into the record. Mr. Jason Haas
Same.
and Josh Greer.
Take a moment.
Okay.
Just want to say thank you for the reconsideration today. Everything you've outlined is completely in sync with what we'd like to do. The cap is not an issue for us. We don't plan to exceed that. The monitoring, I think we would prefer to go with the transducers versus a separate well. I think that actually, to your point of getting to state of the art, I think that gives us the most useful real-time data. And I just want to echo Natoli's questions. You know, we are very committed to long-term recycling. We actually eliminated all plastic bottles a couple of years ago, so everybody actually has their own cups, and we have our own water stations for filling up. I think I mentioned we've already roughed in purple pipe to the corner of Motor and Pico, so that if and when the recycling plant comes online, we'd be thrilled to use that. And we're very happy to do the reporting as well. I think it's part of being part of the basin, and we would like to be a good representative as a pumper there. So I don't have any issues with any of the things you brought up.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Mr. John Davis. Mr. Davis, I will unmute you or request that you unmute yourself. And then you will have 3 minutes.
Yes. This body does not have the legal authority to reconsider a Hillcrest Country Club well application because it did not enter into a legal agreement to establish a GSA pursuant to Water Code 10723. Furthermore, the full reasoning for this proposal has been concealed from the public prior to this meeting. Public comment. Any requested funding to support such a proposal would constitute financial fraud on the state of property and have other such unlawful requests. There are no approved bylaws set forth for the operational procedures to approving the item, and none have been uploaded to the Sigma portal. And in closing, I'd like to say that the chat is disabled. I was asked if I wanted to speak, but I could not respond because chat is disabled. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. The next speaker is Ms. Patricia McPherson. Ms. McPherson, I will promote you to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, thank you. Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition. I think that the Hillcrest is a terrific example of this group working with an entity with regard to every drop of water that is pulled or utilized. As Ms. Natoli has stated, every little bit counts, every little bit helps. And I would question, what is the difference between the Santa Monica area and the city of Santa Monica and the lower portion of the basin, which is not being addressed in this same fashion? You are able to work with, and I'm asking, is this only because there's a lawsuit that is ongoing between Hillcrest and this body? Is that what it takes to have this body speak with others? For instance, Playa Vista is removing a great deal of groundwater, and this body is not asking them for any of this information with regard to how it is affecting the groundwater in the area. With regard to the monitoring of this water that comes out, the transducers, I would appreciate learning and knowing more about how you are monitoring through that. What is the process for determining what are the volumes of water that are coming out? I know that's not an easy thing to do, and it would be helpful if we could find out what that is, and it could be also offered up to even the Water Board and to Playa Vista, the Bionah Wetlands Conservancy that is in charge of the water issues at Bionah Wetlands, which is a groundwater dependent ecosystem that has not been addressed by this board.
Ms. McPherson, you have 1 minute.
1 minute left. I do agree that we don't have a legally binding agreement with this group. It hasn't been explained why that this group can be different from other Sigma entities that do have legally binding agreements. And the ability for you to ask what device, the reporting that will go into what the golf course provides to you and provided quarterly. I see no difference between this and other areas of the basin, except that the city of Santa Monica seems to be working towards its own basin area, and all of you are leaving out the southern portion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. We do not have any other public comments, both either in person or online. At this point, the discussion is back to the board.
Now we vote?
Yes. I mean, unless you have further conversation or discussion.
I think just wanted to clarify with you guys on the reporting and such, right? Obviously, the flow meter you guys recognized to be installed. When you guys have that, if you could correspond with the GSA consultant on what type of flow meter that's installed, as well as if your approach is using the transducers, the data loggers, and the production wells, you could also work with our GSA consultant to establish what that elevation is set at. There's probably going to be some optimization in the beginning, but I believe it's based on what you guys have modeled, what that drawdown could potentially be. So that's where we will set that level initially, right? So there's probably going to be some optimization if you can work with our GSA consultant on that and setting that probe where that needs to be.
Can I
Sure.
ask a clarifying? I appreciate you saying that, Chairman, because that was my big question is, if I understood condition 3 appropriately with installing a transducer, it sounds like, and I understand this is standard operating procedure with operating well, there'd be at some level, we'd have to shut down the well, Hillcrest would have to shut down the well, but I know the GSP doesn't currently have established drawdown levels, and so how do we as a club establish what that level might be? It
Right,
sounds
so
like currently that's not established, and we'd work with.
That's correct, because we don't have data in that area
Exactly, yeah,
yet. So that's something we would have to work towards and optimize. So
Okay.
that's the comment that we need to work with our GSA consultant on that. Because initially, what you guys have modeled is that you'll pump this much and you'll draw down this much is within the margin of uncertainty, right, in the model. And then so you would have the initial set point based on that modeling effort, right? And then you turn on the well, then you'll have to optimize to see where it really needs to be. So I would imagine during the first 6 to 12 months, there's going to be some optimization going on to work with our consultant to then establish where that needs to be set. So right now, I can't really tell you where that's going to be set.
We're very, very happy to work to optimize that. I'm glad you talked about that time frame because I think we would want to look at least a full season to really optimize that. So
Correct.
yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
Just on monitoring frequency, and perhaps you recall, I think we set specific time periods or dates in the procedures that the board had adopted specific reporting requirements.
There are specific reporting requirements. I apologize, I don't have those dates in front of me, but Hillcrest has them and we're happy to coordinate on that.
Yeah, I think it's related to the
It's-
annual reporting.
It's
requirement.
exactly, it's related to the requirements under Sigma for when we need to have data reported for DWR.
So we'll have our GSA consultant provide that as well.
Yeah.
Instead. Sorry, do you guys have any other questions for us on any of those? Okay.
That was my biggest, and then I know you had mentioned real-time data. It sounds like it was clarified by Mr. Gonzalez that really at least daily collection of transducer data.
Yeah.
But we're not envisioning like a a real-time dashboard that
No,
you all have access to?
it's just that the data is logged in real time,
Understood.
and we'll
Okay.
export that later.
Okay,
Right.
great.
Any guys, any other board member have questions or? You guys ready to take action? Okay. So I'll move the, forgot the official wording because it's the double negative. I'll move the consistency finding for Hillcrest proposed 2 additional production well under the condition of 3 conditions. First condition is that they don't extract more than 425 acre feet per year from the total of 5 wells, that's 3 existing and 2 new. And then second condition is all wells, existing and new, will be equipped with full modern devices agreed upon between Hillcrest and our GSA consultant in order to collect production data to provide quarterly and annual updates to the GSA. The third condition would be to install monitoring capabilities to monitor the groundwater production and its impact on the groundwater basin. And the board is providing 2 options for that third condition. One is to install dedicated monitoring wells, 3 dedicated monitoring wells around the well field, or to install transducer data loggers in each of the production wells, so 5 total, to monitor water elevations to determine if there's any adverse impacts on the basin. And that we also encourage Hillcrest through their annual reporting to provide information on other items on their efforts to reduce water use and improve water efficiency, such as drought tolerant landscaping, groundwater recharge programs, maintenance replacement program for their water operations, recycle water, et cetera, any efforts that Hillcrest is doing. So that is my motion with conditions on the consistency finding with Hillcrest's application with the groundwater sustainability plan.
Is it not inconsistent versus consistent?
That is not inconsistent, you're correct.
And did you mention quarterly monitoring?
Yes,
Quarterly and annually.
quarterly and annual reporting.
So we have a very short motion.
You guys got all that, right?
Do we have a second to that?
That was second.
Thank you, Board Member Gonzalez. I will take a roll call vote. Chair Wang,
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli. Board Member Gonzalez,
Aye.
Board Member Singletary.
Aye.
Board Member Welsh.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we will resume the regular course of the agenda at this time. And we are going to move back up to item number 8A. DWR approval of the Santa Monica groundwater subbasin. Are there any, under informational items, are there any agenda management items that we need to consider?
Back to the regular program.
Okay, glad to hear it. So agenda item A is an informational item.
Pull up the. Great, so for the record, this is Jill Weinberger with Dudek, and I am going to be presenting on the approval of the GSP for the Santa Monica subbasin. So DWR issued their approval letter approving the GSP on October 26th of 2023. I was going to say this year, but it was actually last year at this point. And the approval letter said that the GSP met the objectives of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and substantially complied with the GSP regulations. So those were the thresholds that DWR reviewed. And then DWR also went through the GSP in quite a bit more detail and provided some recommended actions to address in the 5-year evaluation. For now, though, the GSA is to continue implementing the GSP as you started to do once you submitted the GSP to DWR. And under that implementation, there are a couple of requirements, which again, we've already been complying with. We have an annual reporting requirement. The next annual report is due April 1st, 2024, and we've begun preparing that annual report for DWR. Then there will be a periodic review, which is their 5-year evaluation time period. And that will be due January 27th, 2027. That is a very specific date because it is 5 years from the date that the GSP was submitted. And so each basin has a slightly different due date for their 5-year periodic review. And in that periodic review, the periodic review needs to consider the recommended corrective actions that DWR presented in their letter. For any changes that are made to the GSP as a result of that consideration, that needs to be documented in the 5-year review. So if we go to the next slide, I will touch on the corrective actions that we saw from DWR. And there are 6 of them that they listed. And I think some of these can be addressed through actual additional communication with DWR, which I would recommend that we embark on now that the GSP has been approved. I will say that I've been in several other meetings with DWR staff that have encouraged communication and said, particularly now that we have approved GSPs, they really want to support GSAs in continuing to implement them and to make whatever changes need to be made before the 5-year evaluation so that they can continue to approve those. So DWR has offered a lot of collaboration over the next several years that we should take advantage of. Having said that, the long intro is the corrective actions are the first one would be to provide additional information and clarification on some of the components of the hydrogeologic conceptual model. And we can certainly do that. Again, I think some of this is a communication with DWR to make sure that we're addressing their concerns where they didn't understand what was in the existing GSP, and we clarify that to make sure that it is what they're looking for moving forward. Secondly, to investigate where seawater intrusion is occurring in the subbasin. That is their phrasing. So I would like to work with them to say, if it's occurring in the subbasin, we don't have any evidence that it is currently occurring. And we did state quite clearly in multiple places in the GSP that that is a data gap that we are well aware of, and that we need to look at the best ways to go about how to address that data gap. So that is something, again, that I think we should be working with DWR to talk to them about what they're looking for how to address it, and to make sure that they're aware that, to our knowledge at this time, there is no seawater intrusion occurring currently. Thirdly, provide additional information related to the sustainable management criteria for groundwater elevations and change in storage. Again, I think this is a clarification that needs to occur within the GSP. It's not a criticism of the selected minimum thresholds or measurable objectives, just a little bit better understanding of how they were selected. Fourth, going back to seawater intrusion, to further investigate it. Again, it was identified as a data gap in the GSP, and to revise the minimum thresholds and undesirable results as additional data are collected, which I think is something that the GSP also committed to, that with further understanding of the basin, further knowledge of the basin, we can better manage it, and that would go in these 5-year evaluations to looking at the selected minimum threshold and measurable objectives and making sure that they still are appropriate and adjust them if they're not. Fifth, identify constituents of concern for the subbasin and establish monitoring networks. Now, this is specifically for groundwater quality not related to seawater intrusion. And so here again, I think this is communication with DWR on the existing cleanup programs in the basin and how the groundwater production actually ties into ensuring that those plumes are being remediated. And so we just need to have that communication. And last is to establish a sustainable management criteria for land subsidence. And we will work with DWR to understand what the appropriate methodology for that would be in this basin, because we know that there is potential for there is the potential for land subsidence from groundwater withdrawal, which is what this body is concerned with. That potential is quite low, and in fact, in the literature that we cite, that DWR cites, we don't have a lot of clay layers in the basin that would cause subsidence from groundwater withdrawal. However, we are in a tectonically active area, and so land surface monuments that are measuring the height of the ground elevation can in fact be going down as a result of tectonic forces in this area, not related to groundwater withdrawal. And there may be some historical relationship between oil withdrawal and subsidence. And so we need to be able to tease out the source of any change in the land surface elevation. And so we would be working with DWR to figure out what would be an appropriate method for them to say that we've looked into subsidence in the basin that is strictly related to groundwater withdrawal. So those are the corrective actions, and that's the presentation. It's great news that the GSP was approved, and we just have some work to do with DWR, communication, coordination to address their concerns.
Thank you for that presentation. Just a quick question on you, Dr. Weinberg, you mentioned collaboration with DWR. How does that usually handled with DWR?
We would work with Dr. Gold to set up a meeting with the DWR contact. So there is a contact for this basin at DWR that we can speak with, and we just get the conversation started. That contact could bring in additional people from DWR as necessary to work with our concerns and work through whatever we need to.
Thank you. Any comments on the presentation or questions? Anybody on the board? Any public comments? Oh, there is, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. I turned away too quickly.
Vice Chair Natoli, I'm very pleased that the plan was approved. It does not seem like, I didn't see any surprises in reading the letter about areas that they felt needed more work. I was extremely pleased to see in their section 4.1 that we are lawfully established as a GSA and have authority to manage the basin for sustainability. And I also have questions just about generally how it works. I wonder if the board needs to provide some guidance on our priorities for working with DWR, or if we just let go of the reins and let our consultant run with DWR.
Or
Just something to think about.
or like a subcommittee, maybe go to the board, because obviously all of us have to be there.
Maybe a subcommittee. But thank you, consultants. It is a thankful job. We thank you.
Yes. We have two public commenters. Mr. John Davis, you are first, followed by Ms. Patricia McPherson. Mr. Davis, I will unmute you.
Yes. Only the city of Santa Monica released an RFP for the contractor. Only the city of Santa Monica hired the contractor, DUDEC, and only for an evaluation of that city's jurisdiction. This group and the contractor have falsely represented to the public and the DWR that a groundwater sustainability plan for the entire Santa Monica Basin was created, to the objection of the public who informed you of this fact. It is my belief this represents fraud and financial fraud against the people of the state of California. Only a GSP established pursuant to Water Code 10723.6 and one in which an RFP for a contractor to conduct a plan for the entire basin is set forth by such a legal GSA is legally capable of producing a groundwater sustainability plan for the entire basin. Here, the group has failed to comply with the water code, and basically, it is so obvious that the contractor and the city of Santa Monica only intended to do work within the jurisdiction of the city. This is why the data gaps exist. This is why no evaluation of the Santa Monica, the Venice subbasin of the Santa Monica Basin has been considered. The statement that there is no saltwater intrusion is false. The purported basin plan demonstrates that seawater intrusion has occurred in the Venice Basin east up to Lincoln Boulevard. The Sigma online maps demonstrate the saltwater intrusion has reached within the borders of the city of Santa Monica. It is obvious that this knowledge was held by this body or this group
Mr.
and
Davis, you have 1 minute.
they refused to consider it in the plan. And now it's come back to bite you in the form of a gap, and that should never have happened. Had a legal body hired a contractor consistent with the law, and the rule of law is important to me and should be important to you, it would have revealed these mistakes. But instead, a charade has occurred where it has been purported that the plan only evaluating the city of Santa Monica jurisdiction extends through the entire basin, which is poppycock. And I am ashamed of this group for what it has done. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Ms. McPherson, followed by Ms. Margot Griswold. Ms. McPherson?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Thank you. Patricia McPherson again, Grassroots Coalition. I think that the synopsis that you just provided, that Joel Weinberger provided to you with regard to the caveats that DWR has laid forth was very short shrifted. We have been asking for evaluation for a groundwater dependent ecosystem of the Ballona region, which includes Playa Vista, per the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's protocol. It's a very specific protocol. It has not been addressed whatsoever. And the comments from the Nature Conservancy, Union of Concerned Scientists, California Audubon, LA Audubon, Grassroots Coalition, BEEP, and others, we have been confirmed now by DWR for the things that we have been asking for that have been short shrifted by this group. So we would like to see it enforced and not put off. And I believe that DWR said that they would potentially withhold any further grants to this body if they did not adhere to the caveats and the recommendations that they put forward. These are issues that we know that there is saltwater intrusion. We know because I just also told you, and Dudek could have even walked out there to look to see that we have flap gates that have been broken for months, that we have saltwater intrusion going into a predominantly freshwater area. This is all of great concern to us that this body is not dealing with whatsoever. The Ballona Wetlands Conservancy is Playa Vista driven, and we have no one garnering any information from them the way that you have garnered information from Hillcrest.
Ms. McPherson, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. The inconsistency of how you're treating the city of Santa Monica and its golf courses for every drop of water and potentials for saltwater intrusion are in stark contrast to the utter lack of bringing in information. And to have Dudek say, and all of you apparently agree with only going to DWR because, as Dudek has said to you, DWR seems to have misunderstood what was in the plan. I don't believe that's true. And I don't believe the Nature Conservancy, Union of Concerned Scientists, or any of the LA Audubon people or California Audubon believe that that is so. I would request that you honorably go after this data and information that exists, and the utter lack of it when it is so obviously there is unfathomable. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Margot Griswold. Margot, I don't see you as an attendee. Are you calling in from a number?
Perhaps if she's on, she could raise her hand if it's a different name.
Okay, Ms. McPherson, are you going to be allowing Ms. Griswold to speak.
Good morning, board. I guess I'm speaking as Patricia McPherson.
Yes, I
But
don't
this
have,
is-
yeah, I don't have you, so this is
Right.
Ms. Griswold, correct?
This is Dr. Griswold, yes.
Thank you, go ahead.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Los Angeles Audubon Society. We have been commenting for several years on the preparation of the plan, and I would echo some of Patricia McPherson's comments. I thought a little bit of soft pedal there by your consultant. These are corrective actions that are being requested. And further, I'm curious, will you, as the GSA, be providing some guidance in the form of responding to the notice of preparation for the Department of Fish and Wildlife's plan for the Ballona wetlands to lower the surface elevation to below current sea level? Does this concern you at all about trying to determine saltwater intrusion? And where are we here? We've been calling for years for this. And so I don't know how information is moving through the GSA. We had meetings with Member Natoli. She heard our questions. She arranged at the last meeting and then all stopped there. So I would request, can I be part of the consultants' meetings as a member of the public, volunteering? Because otherwise, how do we get our information? And how do we make clear what is simply not being made clear about the importance of the Ballona wetlands as a groundwater dependent ecosystem?
Dr. Griswold, you have 50 seconds.
It's not been made clear to our consultant, and it's not resonating there. So I believe the wetlands deserve representation. Their historical ecology deserves to be heard. Their freshwater resources deserve to be protected. Their groundwater, which is your purview, needs to be protected. So I hope that you are commenting to the Department of Fish and Wildlife that they need to account for an analysis, a true analysis of saltwater intrusion into the bellflower, the Ballona, and possibly the Silverado aquifer through the connection. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board reaction, questions, comments?
Is that all the public comments?
That is all the public comments on this item.
Any other questions, comments on this item?
Next item on our agenda is item number 8B, update on DWR Sustainable Groundwater Management Round 2 grant funding.
Okay, so I think that's me.
Would you mind stating your name for the
Yes.
record? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alex Wade. I'm the supervising civil engineer for the City of Santa Monica's Water Resources Division. So here to provide an update on California Division of Water Resources Sustainable Groundwater Management grant, Round 2 grant funding, otherwise the SGM Round 2 grant funding. Next slide, please. Okay, so a quick presentation overview. So just overview of the grant application and what was included, that was submitted with that application, the award that was provided for that application that we received, the awarded project overview, which is the new groundwater recharge well, which we'll get to in a minute, and then the tentative project schedule. Next slide, please. Okay, so a quick overview of the SGM grant program application. So this grant program is administered through the California DWR, and it's funded through the general fund as well as Proposition 68. So this application that was submitted was in December 2022 for Santa Monica Groundwater Sub-Basin Recharge and Monitoring Project. The application submitted under the round two solicitation. So there's $187 million total within the round two solicitation from the DWR. And these were the 5 components that were submitted under the application submitted for this project. So the first component is the design and installation of a new groundwater recharge well. Second is the design and installation of monitoring wells. And so just to clarify, this component 2 is up to 3 monitoring wells in the coastal subbasin to help clarify that data gap, which we were just talking about in the previous item. Component 3 is the preparation of a salt and nutrient management plan for the Santa Monica subbasin, which we talked about back in October about the salt and nutrient management plan. And obviously we have under the action items for the RFP for the salt and nutrient management plan. Component 4 is a refinement of the Los Angeles coastal plain groundwater model in the Santa Monica subbasin. And finally, component 5 is grant administration. On to the next slide, please. So the SGM, the grant award that we received for this project was approximately $6.2 million in grant funding. Unfortunately, we did not receive grant funding for all 5 of the components that were submitted. We only received funding for component 1, which is the design and installation of that new groundwater recharge well, as well as for component 5, the grant administration. So just some stats on this. So as I mentioned, there's 187 million that was available. There were 82 applications received by DWR, and in total that was requesting over $780 million. So this was very competitive. So we're happy to get any grant funding, quite honestly. Next slide, please. So just an overview of the component that did receive grant funding. So this is for the new groundwater recharge well. It's circled in the figure with the red circle showing future injection well SM11I. So as we talked about before in with this board, there is one groundwater recharge well that's nearing operational readiness. That's our SM10I well. It has a capacity of 200 gallons per minute, so approximately 320 acre feet per year of capacity. And so what this grant will fund is the proposed new injection well, SM11I. This has a tentative capacity of around 250 to 300 GPM based off of exploratory borings that we've accomplished so far. And so with the existing SM10I plus 11I, we should be able to recharge about 700 to 800 acre feet per year finished treated recycled water in the subbasin. So it's a huge boost to have one more injection well into the subbasin. And next slide, please. So just close on the tentative project schedule here. So the design for the proposed injection well is in progress. Well drilling is slated for summer 2025. Hopefully we'll stick to that piece. Well equipping is for summer 2024. Well equipping for summer 2025, and with the project completion and the close of the grant funding by spring 2026. So it is a very, very tight schedule, and we are in talks with DWR about how to fast track this process as much as possible to make sure that we are able to utilize all of the grant funding that's available. And with that, I'll close for questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Vice Chair Toll.
No questions, but a comment. Congratulations on receiving the grant, because the other GSA I sit on was not able to receive any round 2 funding.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'm also very sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
I do want to say, can you go back to that fence? We do put up absolutely gorgeous artwork here in the city of Santa Monica. If anyone noticed the fence?
Yes.
Amy, can you go back a slide? I mean, it's really outstanding. Is that the aquifer?
Yeah, so this is our SM10I injection well. It's located in the Olympic Boulevard, right in the median. And so we have that architectural fence there that's actually showing the groundwater aquifer layers. It's kind of neat.
Just gonna say, when we do things.
Almost has a scenic corridor.
I don't want to know the price. I just want to say, I think it's outstanding.
That is also designed by a local artist, who's Garden that designed that as well. It's supposed to mimic the mountain front recharge, so those are the lines you see up top, and then the bottom half is the different gravel layers of soil, so that's why you see rock and other things at the bottom.
You have to explain.
Well, I know one saw, but that to me looks like an aquifer, but maybe that's just me.
I had to go out there and pick the rocks, that's why. I want to make sure people understand what effort's involved there. I just a general question, did the DWR mention why the other components were not funded, like the 2, 3, and 4?
So this is Zach Swade speaking. That's a good question. I don't recall if there was a specific conversation about why the other aspects were not funded. I'll look into that.
What was our original ask? How much did we ask for and then we got 6.2?
Sure, I
Which is
believe.
a lot.
Yeah.
2 million.
And I might turn to the GSA consultant here for a little help because they helped prepare the application. I believe it was a little over $11 million total.
And I might have just been wanting to spread the grant.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact ask. I believe a lot of the selection criteria also had to do with projects that could produce measurable results in the aquifers, right? So the component that was selected is an actual injection well that helps directly with the sustainability as opposed to some of the planning components that they didn't select for this round.
Are the other components still going to advance forward despite not receiving funding?
Yeah, so again, this is actually speaking. Yeah, so the intent is that we will still be pursuing these other components. So for reference, we have the salt nutrient management plan, that RFP here, which we do hope to post and still proceed with that project, regardless if there's grant funding or not. Similarly with the monitoring wells, we are looking at opportunities to proceed with that project. So we'll try and keep track of that one, keep it going.
On a similar timeline, 2025 for the monitoring, or that's not? Is there a schedule for the monitoring?
We don't currently have a schedule for the implementation of the additional monitoring wells.
Pending funding discussion later.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you for that presentation.
We have one public comment,
Oh, all right.
Mr. Davis.
Still there.
Are you on mute? Is he on mute?
Okay, I see that I am now unmuted.
Okay.
Regarding 8B, it would be helpful if this group responded to public comments during this agenda item, or it may continue to ignore valid public concerns and evade speaking to those points during the meeting. Public is your partner and deserves recognition of its input from members of this group. Having ignored our input has just caused a cascade of errors, one after another, and the cascade just grows to a torrent. This body does not have the legal authority to request SGM Round 2 grant funding because it did not enter into a legal agreement to establish a GSA pursuant to Water Code 10723.6. To unlawfully request such funding again, and with the knowledge this group has not complied with the Water Code, represent further fiscal fraud against the people of this state. A request for public records of funding and expenditures of the public money that this body controlled pursuant to the Public Records Act was not responded to at all. You know, I submitted a public records asking for all the fiscal records, but they're being concealed for some reason. I would like to know why these records are being concealed from the public when we ask for them. No other agency that I've ever encountered in this state has ever failed to comply with such requests. The money trail is the most important thing to follow. The failure to produce fiscal records has been reported to the State Water Board's fraud representative, as has this proposal to request yet more untraceable funding. County Board of Supervisors and the various city councils will be informed.
1 minute remaining.
That is clock watching, and just let me finish. I have a clock.
Okay.
The county supervisors and various city councils will be informed of these unlawful activities, as well as other entities that can take enforcement actions for requesting and receiving untraceable funds from the public. This is, it's just unconscionable. And again, it would be very helpful if members of this group would actually respond to the public during the during the agenda item and acknowledge our points and speak to them unless you're afraid to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patricia McPherson.
Again, you hear me, yes?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I echo what Mr. Davis just said with regard to responding to the public. We would like to be partners in this. We do not feel that we are partners in this. We feel that we have been partnered somewhat with DWR as they have validated our concerns by asking for the very things that we have been asking for the past 3 years and have received non-responsiveness from this body. Ms. Natoli has asked questions. We thank her for the questions that she's asked, and we would like to see them properly responded to. With regard to her comment on 4.1 with DWR, I'm not aware of DWR citing the fact that the lack of having a legal agreement, a legally binding agreement, as opposed to an MOU, which is established as a non-legally binding agreement, which even for the county, the Public Record Act request by Mr. Davis asked for the legally binding agreement with this between this body. And the county responded, there are no such documents responsive to that request. So I would like to have that explained as well, because from my understanding, DWR has taken it for granted that you have approached this in a properly legal fashion. And they haven't even questioned it. So we are asking them to question it now. And I believe that's on deck. I do have concerns also with Dudek telling you things that the clay layers that are out on the Bayona area, for instance, that they make claims that they have no substantiation for it. It is not an even clay layer. We have the scientific
Ms.
documentation.
McPherson, could you please restrict your comments to the actual item 8B?
Well, this all has to do with having these grants provided to you. DWR has already stated, if you do not fulfill those caveats that they have asked it, the recommendations, that you may not receive another grant. I've heard no one even bring that up. I was at a meeting with the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission, and the city councilman, the city mayor from Santa Monica actually said, look, I've been on tour. I know that there are problems with the fresh water and not being protected at Bayona. What's going on here? We need another alternative from CDFW. I do not see this body alerting the city council to any of these issues. It's like there is a whole plan to not connect the dots with the people and even the mayor of the city of Culver City and all of the people in the Democratic clubs of Culver City that have asked for a proper GDE.
Your time has expired, Ms.
evaluation.
McPherson.
Thank you.
If I may clarify, just for the record, to the last speaker's comments, just want to make it crystal clear. This is Susan Cola speaking on behalf of the City of Santa Monica, that the grant that was received was applied for and received only by the City of Santa Monica. The purpose of this update is to just give the GSA, because the City of Santa Monica is within the jurisdiction of the GSA, an update on the grant applied for and received by the City of Santa Monica. That request to apply for that grant went through a public process. If any speaker or anyone wants to make a PRA request to the City of Santa Monica for any of those records, for the public record, for the resolution which accepted the grant, anybody is free to do that. We will be fully compliant with the PRA.
We do not have any more public comments.
Next item. Let's see.
Yes.
So item 8C, Vice Chair Natoli's discussion with grassroots coalition. I believe this is continued from October 18th meeting.
That's correct.
There's questions that's supposed to be legal questions or technical questions. I don't know if we parse that out yet, or this done, or this discussion, or?
I think unless this is Susan Cola speaking only on behalf of the city of Santa Monica. If any of the members of the board have specific questions, you can ask them. I don't think we are prepared, at least, to make any kind of legal analysis or statement on the record.
So we proceed with guideline questions. I don't know when we left off last time.
They stopped, just
Okay.
wanted to go back and look at all of the questions. This is Vice Chair Natoli. So the attorneys have had these questions for about 5 months, and so I don't understand why we don't have some answers to them. But what I will do today is go through the questions and ask them. You can let me know if that's a question you can't answer, but I'd actually like to get some answers today if possible. I'll skip the first question because I've been told that's not a question that's a question for my public works folks. So the second question, and this seems like a factual question. This doesn't seem like a legal question. Perhaps Dr. Weinberger can respond to that. Is it accurate that water pumped for Playa Vista is not included in our GSP model? That sounds like a factual question.
So I think I responded to this at the last meeting as well. The model that was developed for the basin is a USGS groundwater model, and it is based on the best available science, which was acknowledged by DWR in their approval of the GSP. And it's a basin scale model, which is what we are required to do to include in the GSP. It did not include specific extraction wells in the vicinity of Playa Vista. So in that sense, it is true that explicit pumping from the Playa Vista area is not included in the model. However, as we've talked about a number of times before, that the model was calibrated to the measured water levels in the basin. Therefore, any pumping that occurred in the Playa Vista area impacted the measured water level. And so that model incorporates all of the pumping in the form of the water levels themselves.
So that actually answers question 3.
Yes.
Which is, if it is not included, why don't we count it? Because the measured water level accounts for that level.
The measured water level was used to calibrate the model. And I will add to question 3 that under Sigma, we actually look at groundwater measurements to be able to demonstrate to DWR that we are complying with the minimum thresholds and measurable objectives that are set forth in the GSP. So those are measured groundwater levels.
Okay. Moving on to question 4. It seems to me that perhaps the first part of this is factual and maybe the second half is not. So I will only ask the first half of the question because I think that's something that, again, is factual. If someone did a Public Records Act request, they could find that out. Does Playa Vista have a permit to pump and dump groundwater?
I'll say that there are several existing permits for dewatering and groundwater pumping for remediation at Playa Vista, and those were issued by the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
All right, thank you.
Sorry if I may tag on to that. Are any of those permits under the general, or like the general discharge permit?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I couldn't answer that right now.
Thank you.
And the second half, perhaps that's a legal question that I would hope that the attorneys could say why perhaps that cannot be answered today, which is, does the GSA have any authority over where the water is dumped? That also seems to me like a factual question, but if it's just legal, just tell me it's a legal question, and that's why it can't be answered today.
The discharge of water is generally regulated by the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
And especially if they've issued a permit.
Right, because we have no authority to issue
Oh,
permits.
Okay, well, that seems to answer the question.
That would probably be under the Clean Water Act and the Park Law.
Okay. 5, are there other groundwater producers in the basin not included in the model? I believe you answered this last time, but instead of piecemealing it over several meetings, let's just get everything in one nice little transcript.
Right, so the golf courses are not explicitly included in the model, and there are dewatering activities that are also not explicitly included elsewhere throughout the subbasin. But again, I come back to the idea that the model was calibrated to groundwater conditions, so actual measured groundwater levels.
So even though somebody might be pulling it out over here, we're measuring the water down there, which at least tells us what the water level is.
That's right, and that the impact of pumping from the model projections would be reflective of the impacts to the groundwater levels as a whole in the basin.
Okay, thank you. 6, this might be a legal one. Do Sigma and our adopted GSP give us the authority to request water data from pumpers within the basin? That also seems factual to me. We either have authority in Sigma or we don't.
Whether you do or don't is a legal question, but you can answer whether it's in there.
My understanding is that Sigma does allow for GSAs to request production data and water level data, other data related to groundwater production, in order to be able to better manage their basins moving forward.
Okay, thank you. 7, maybe I only ask the first half of this because again, that seems factual. Did we use the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's EIR for alterations to the Ballona wetlands for our GSP?
We looked at the EIR for its characterization of the habitat in that area, and we included that. We looked at the studies that were done for their characterization of the subsurface in the area of the Ballona wetlands. And we correlated water level changes that occurred in the vicinity of the primary production zones with where we had wells and measured water levels in the vicinity of the wetlands. And we used the water level differences that we observed elsewhere in the basin to see if those were mimicked by water level changes in the wetlands. And we did not observe a correlation between those two sets of water levels. And that's what we used to determine that there was not a connection between pumping in the Silverado aquifer and water level in the Ballona wetlands.
Okay, let me just jot that down real quick. All right, thank you. 8, I will only ask half of this question because even I look at the second half as perhaps being the legal part of the question. So the first half is, did a lawsuit decertify Fish and Wildlife's Ballona wetlands EIR? That seems factual to me.
That's a legal question that she's not qualified to answer.
Isn't that factual? I mean, can't you call up Fish and Wildlife and ask, hey, was your EIR decertified?
It's ongoing litigation is my understanding.
Okay, so if it's ongoing, it hasn't been decertified because it's an ongoing litigation. And if the litigation hasn't been decided, then it can't be decertified yet. Is that correct?
What?
Again, this is a legal issue that really should be resolved separately. There's a legal decision that your counsel can explain.
It could be stayed pending. In other words, we don't know the actual status at this moment. We hear the question. I think that is something that we could verify, by just going online and figuring out what the posture is. So I think we can come back with a response on what the legal posture is.
I'll just share, I guess, what I know from a regional board meeting. They had an info item on this, and I could share that link with, you know, the board here on that link. There was a presentation made on it. There were certain items, I believe, that had to be revisited in that EIR. I don't know if that means it's certified or decertified. It was just presented that there were certain items that had to be reanalyzed and presented again. So
But I-
could share that.
And there was
Thank
a
you.
commitment by State Fish and Wildlife
Right.
to quickly address it.
I'm sorry,
Submit
you're
it.
not the consultant. Okay.
So let me try and summarize. I believe, Councilor Cola, what you said was very important. It could have been stayed. So no, we don't know the status. It could have been stayed. We can't make a decision until these issues are resolved. So it hasn't been certified. It hasn't been decertified.
And whether that has a legal impact on the GSP, that's.
I haven't asked that. If you were listening, I only asked the first half of the question. Like I said, even I recognize the second half is legal. I didn't go to law school. But yes, so it's up in the air. The answer to that question
We
is,
can tell you exactly what the posture is,
okay,
but we just can't do it this second. I think
sure.
try and-
Even though you folks have had these questions for 5 months. Okay, thank you. 9, did we run both a groundwater and surface water model for the GSP? Dr. Weinberger, factual question.
Yeah, so we did do a basin-wide groundwater model for the GSP. What the surface water inputs from that were from a separate USGS model called a basin characterization model, which I know sounds again like a groundwater model. This is actually a surface model. So we incorporated the surface water component from the basin characterization model into the groundwater model. And this is an appropriate set of tools under Sigma, and the model suite really does represent the best available science for this effort.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. 10. I don't know if this is a legal question, or if this is a question for biologists and hydrogeologists. Do we agree with Fish and Wildlife's EIR that opening Ballona wetlands to full tidal action will not increase the risk of saltwater intrusion into the aquifers in the vicinity? Now, maybe since the EIR is in limbo, maybe you can't answer that, because we don't know if the EIR has been certified or not.
Well, isn't your question whether the two are related, right? Whether that.
Do we
surface water,
agree
groundwater.
with their recommendation? Do we agree with Fish and Wildlife?
Well, I would say
I would caution that it's ongoing litigation, we shouldn't take a position as to one
Yeah.
party or the other. Whether the factual question about full tidal action will not increase it, I think that's a question you can answer, that's a factual question. But whether we agree or disagree with an EIR is a separate question.
So that's an interesting point. That's a good way, that's a good counter question, which is, so in your experience as a hydrogeologist with all kinds of alphabet soup after your name, exposing wetlands to full tidal action, does that increase the risk of saltwater intrusion? If we were down at Bolsa Chica, or if we were, wherever, someplace else, we're not in the Ballona wetlands because we have an issue there. Geologically speaking, does it depend on how much those wetlands are impacted by the existing tidal action to begin with?
Let me start by saying it's a big hypothetical, because I think we've started drawing in other areas, but I will say in general, the dependence of the influence of seawater on what's currently occurring in a wetlands. Yes, you would have to look at what's there currently. Is it saltwater or freshwater there currently? If it's already saltwater, then an additional opening to tidal action wouldn't necessarily impact that. You'd have to look at the, subsurface geology. And you would have to look at the proposed plans of where it's being opened, what that would do, and what is the intended purpose of the plan, right? From my perspective, there is also a separate then consideration for people looking at the actual production aquifers in the basin, and that is whether or not those production aquifers are connected to the area being described. So that understanding would also have to be developed.
All right, so that's good information for perhaps at some point in the future, understanding what may or may not be going on at the Bayonet wetlands. That's general geology.
That is general geology. Can I also add that we did look at that connection in the GSP. That's what I was describing with looking at the water level changes in the production aquifers and looking at the shallow water levels at the coast and not seeing that connection in the geology. So we did examine that in the GSP as we needed to satisfy DWR.
Okay, thank you. And then this is an issue often brought up to me. Does our GSP evaluate the groundwater conditions in Bayonet wetlands? I believe you've answered that a couple of times already today.
Yeah, and I'll say yes, we looked at historical and future groundwater conditions in the Bayonet wetlands. And we developed measures in the GSP to reassess those conditions as necessary and to trigger additional monitoring within the area.
Okay, and then of course, we didn't ignore the Bayonet wetlands just because there's some pending EIR over here.
We did not ignore the Bayonet wetlands. They are addressed in the GSP. They are called a groundwater dependent ecosystem in the GSP. They're addressed in several sections of the GSP. They were not ignored.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, apparently there is a report called the Poland report that supposedly we did not use. If we did not use it in evaluating the basin for our GSP, why didn't we use that Poland report?
So we do use what's referred to by some as the Poland report. It is cited in the GSP multiple times, but the references, naming conventions in the GSP cite the report as USGS 1959. And so that is in the report multiple times. It's USGS 1959. Now, what we do is we look at the data from that report, which has historical data, and then we also build on that data with more recent reports as well. So we do cite that report, use that report, and where more recent data has been gathered and supersedes the data in that report, we use the more recent data and cite those reports as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm satisfied with the answers. I still would like to know about the status of the Fish and Wildlife draft EIR, I guess we should call it, not an EIR, draft EIR, on their proposed restoration. But I'm satisfied with the answers that we've continually received over the last several years, that our GSP, and sounds like the state agrees, our GSP is adequate. It included the best science available at the time, and Fish and Wildlife, DWR has already let us know some areas where we need to improve in the GSP. So I'm satisfied that we've answered the questions posed by the public over the years. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board members?
We do have a public comment. We have two public speakers. Our first public speaker is John Davis.
Yes, this is in regard to legal matters. Please review the comments I submitted for distribution by Lizette Gold. You should have them. Here are the further unanswered questions. Please move to continue this as an agenda item for the next meeting. The Porter Cologne Act prevents potential sources of public drinking water in the Biono wetlands from being impacted. All aquifers are important, not only production aquifers. Are all aquifers being evaluated for saltwater intrusion, and if not, why? The purported plan demonstrates saltwater intrusion has already occurred in the Venice subbasin. Groundwater has already reached Highway 1 to the east. This has damaged the Bellflower Aquitar, the Biono Aquifer, and the Silverado Aquifer, which the Poland Geologic Report validates as being in communication. And here is the most important question that is not being asked that everybody should be asking. Why did the County of Los Angeles respond to a request for public records of compliance with Water Code 10723.6 to establish a purported GSA under a legal agreement? The response is, there are no public records responsive to your request. There are no records of this entity complying with Water Code 10723.6, nor is there a record of a legal agreement. The other questions are, why did Lizette Gold represent to the public a GSA was established in 2017 without the parties entering into a legal agreement pursuant to Water Code 10723.6? Why did Sunny Wang upload an MOU to the Sigma portal that specifically stated it was not intended to be a legal agreement, and then state the same MOU justified establishment of a GSA pursuant to Water Code 10723.6, which requires a legal agreement between members? Why are the majority of MOU resolutions uploaded by Mr. Wang unsigned? Why has the purported GSA failed to comply with the Brown Act continually, including at this meeting and the prior meetings? Why isn't there a legal counsel for this purported agency? Why is the purporting agency concealing its financial records from the public? The city of Santa Monica does not control the financial records of a lawful GSA. Only that GSA does. No other entity can provide those financial records because they're purported to be used by the GSA itself. Even if Santa Monica is a component, it does not have the authority to answer public records requests submitted to what is purported to be a lawful agency. Why did Lizette Gold self-appoint herself as secretary prior to being authorized by this purported GSA? What person acted as the treasurer prior to the establishment of officers of the purported GSA, and under what authorization? Why has the purported GSA been operating without approved bylaws?
Your time has expired, Mr. Davis. Our next speaker is Patricia McPherson.
Hello, it's Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition. I'm very disturbed, Vice Chair Natoli, that you are satisfied with these answers. It is unbelievable the contortionist answers that we have received from Jill Weinberger and Dudek as to what measurement is measuring what and where. If it's not affecting the city of Santa Monica, that's all that seems to be the answer here. We already have the California Coastal Commission, who had cited Playa Vista and CDFW for violating the Coastal Act for harming the Biono wetlands hydrology. That was the litigation that Grassroots Coalition had regarding illegal drains that were out there. The drainage continues. This body is not looking at any of the drainage and simply shirking its duties and even monitoring what kind of drainage is happening out there. Grassroots Coalition litigated and won and was able to stop a portion of the drainage in the illegal drains. And yes, there are NPDES permits, as you fully know. And those permits come up for re-up again. And Grassroots Coalition asked the water board, please do not allow this because good practices do not waste this water. As you've said, Ms. Natoli, every drop counts. And the water board agreed and disallowed Playa Vista and the Biono Wetlands Conservancy from discharging that water into the ocean. There has been
1 minute
nothing,
remaining.
there has been nothing but extremely superficial review of this issue that we have raised with you, which is why the DWR did not put out petty comments. They specifically asked for surface and groundwater connection information that is missing. They've asked for everything we've asked you to look at here. And I would say because of the responses that DUDEC has provided, that we need to have someone else looking at this and gathering the data, because obviously there's an unwillingness to even go out and gather the data. Why is that? Why is that?
Have you completed your comments?
You're interrupting my thought track. I can tell you that. Everything that the DUDEC did do originally for this plan was for the city of Santa Monica. That's what the contract is with. The RFP.
Ms. McPherson, I will give you 10 more seconds.
It had nothing to do with this body. And the reliance on that alone is egregious. It's mumbo jumbo that we're getting. We're getting contortionist answers.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up your comments now. Are you
They're
done?
wrapped.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is, yes, Ms. Natoli.
Just one comment, since it's already been mentioned twice today, I want to respond to Mr. Davis. The Public Records Act request that the county received, you were provided a document, you were provided the memorandum of understanding, which the state has reviewed and found adequate. You were not ignored. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comment?
No, I was actually gonna propose a 5-10 minute break before we go on AD.
That's fine. It's
So-
10:16. Well, how about we just round it to 10:30? Is that
Sure.
reasonable? Thank you.
We're gonna be powerful.
Oh, yeah, I sent you a text. It's good, yeah. It's quick.
So I'd like to call the meeting back to order. It is 10:33 a.m. Next item on our agenda is 8D, Board Policy on Public Comment Material. Chair Witt.
Right, I think this item was continued from last board meeting and the previous board meeting, how to best handle public comments. Right, there was a request from Director Wells to include public comments in the board packet. If I recall correctly, the board packet we get about a week before the board meeting, is that correct?
Right.
And that's also when we posted on the GSA website.
Right.
Right. So I think,
The backup, if I can tell you, is we have now a section on the official GSP website for public comments
received for that meeting.
received for that meeting. So if you go to the website, you'll see. So like Mr. Davis gave us comments too late for the board packet. He did email it to all the board members. We'll put that on that last column on the GSP website.
I guess the question is when do we keep uploading that? Like as we receive it, we're uploading that, or?
Well, good question. I
That's what we're discussing.
because I have his comments, anything that comes in today would go on that column for that meeting. And then reset it and then go for the next meeting.
Yeah.
I don't get comments until right before the quarterly meeting, and they're just generally not making it into the board packet because we've got to get it to all of you. So
Yeah, I think what we're discussing, just a policy of like up until what cutoff time do we get it sent to us, and afterwards it'll be just on the website. And then there's also the discussion on what do we do with public comment that's things that's handed to us as the meeting starts, because we also have that, right? What do we do with that material? I think that's what we're discussing. We'll decide on that procedure.
So Rob Welch, Beverly Hills, I like the idea of having the availability to post any public comment up to the moment that that public comment is heard. So if there's a certain item that an individual is wanting to speak on and submit material or written comment, up until that item is heard, we could then collect that information and then post it, make it available on the website.
Okay. What about in terms of receiving it for, like in our board packet, then what cutoff do we put there?
I think we could post a time. I mean, there's a time period we have to prepare the packet for print. We can make that publicly available, that any public comment received up to this point, we could potentially include.
Okay, so let's decide that, the timing then, and then we'll.
That may be a lot of information to put in.
Yeah, so the maybe that you want to make sure we have enough time for staff to compile that as well, right? To send it over to us for the GSA consultant. So is there, I guess for the legal entity we have in the room, is there any legal requirement of providing those public comments to us?
Well, typically, this is Susan Cola speaking on behalf of the city of Santa Monica, but typically if there's materials distributed at the meeting or that are not posted on the website in time, then you just have to have them publicly available for anybody to obtain and present, or present, and then they would already be on the website and then have it distributed to each of the board members present. But that is why it's usually good to have a cutoff time that's sufficient enough so that it could be part of the packet, because that's more efficient.
Right. So I agree on the cutoff times. Up until that agenda item is heard, we'll accept those public comments and then they'll be posted on the website after the meeting or a couple of days after the meeting. But if it's written comments to the board that was emailed to GSA's consultant or to the secretary of the GSA, for example, like up until say 48 hours before the meeting, that will be transmitted to the board. After that, it would just go on, be posted on the website, it wouldn't be sent to us because they need time to compile, right?
Well, and here's a clarification. I mean, for example, Mr. Davis had sent all of you that email, as well as CC'd myself. Do I need to resend it to you, or do you accept it directly from the public?
I think we probably best just for clarity and ease of unfortunately I would just resend it again, but not as email. So I think you'll be compiling. For example, we get the board packet a week beforehand, and then up until 48 hours, there'll be a second packet. If there's any public comments on those items, we'll get those PDF and it's sent to us. If there's any
An
public
addendum
comments.
or attached to the original board packet? Or just call it an addendum, this just came in 48 hours before?
Yeah, like public comments and addendum.
Okay,
Because we don't need to see the stuff again, we transmitted, right?
you already have that, right?
Yeah, it's just because the public's not gonna be able to send in comments until they see the items are posted on the website.
So I don't want to draw attention, but it is a good example. So Mr. Davis had sent an email to all of you yesterday at 4:53 p.m. with
Attachments.
with an attachment. So what would you like to do if that comes in at Tuesday at 4:53?
So
The
if,
day before, the night before?
yeah, so that would just go on the website.
Okay,
Right, that wouldn't be, you wouldn't have enough time to compile and send that to it. So I would say that's what we need to decide on here is what is the
Right.
cutoff time for that to be put together, sent to us, and the rest kind of gets made onto the website, right?
okay.
Vice Chair Natoli, what we do at the county is if public comment comes in after 5 p.m. the night before the hearing, We actually print out copies, and those are handed to the planning commission or the hearing officer the next day. And they're available, those materials are available for members of the public to see in the back of the hearing room. So we don't like printing things, but then at least it's made available to the public and available to the decision maker printing it out.
What about reading it into the record? So we get an email, we can identify as part of our agenda if anything we receive up to a certain date will be included in the packet, and also, and obviously that would be on the website. Anything received after that date would be read into public record, like an email, and those attachments would be included on the
Okay,
website.
but not read the 41-page attachment. You're
No,
saying just
we would have to
email.
say approximately whatever 3 minutes worth of email. I think that's what we do with the city of Beverly Hills. We say please keep your comments to around 350 words, which is about 3 minutes. That will be read into the record, and then we could attach those.
Okay, because I just want to let you know that that's what, you got a 41-page attachment
Yeah,
at 4:53.
I understand.
last night,
We
so-
don't have time to read that into the public record.
Perhaps instead of reading it into the record, because I don't know that we should limit people to the length of their public comment. Maybe there could just be an announcement. We received an email at 4:53 PM on 16 January, a 41-page document from Mr. John Davis with the subject heading, "This is the subject I'm discussing," and it will be posted on the website.
Or we read 3 minutes of the email and stop after 3 minutes.
All right,
I don't know.
You tell.
Because that would be a lot that staff have to be, we technically don't have staff either. Right?
That's true.
So that my worry is that, because in a typical council meeting, we have city clerk's office, people, personnel to handle all that stuff. I would try to simplify it, right? Maybe it's stuff we receive, like maybe 24 hours the cutoff time before the ahead of the meeting. The public comments after that, we'll also just post on the website, right? Public comments received 24 hours before the meeting starts. They will PDF it and send it to us, right? Anything after that will be posted on the website. In addition to what
Wouldn't we include everything that we receive on the website?
Yeah, but they just they might not have enough time to compile so that to us. We gotta set some cutoff time for the general public too. If they wanted things to be sent to us, they have to adhere to that 24-hour cutoff time. They could still more welcome to make public comments at the meeting. They present things, right?
If I could clarify, I would say instead of, they can't send us anything unless it's 24 hours ahead of time. They can send us whatever they want,
Right.
whenever they want.
Yes.
But less time than 24 hours before the meeting, it's just going to be posted on the website.
Correct.
So
I agree.
up until 24 hours before we would receive it, but after that, we won't receive it to review for the meeting.
Right.
But it will be posted on the website.
Correct.
I don't think, we can't say you can't.
Yeah, sorry for clarifying that. What I meant is they just wouldn't, staff wouldn't have time to compile, send that to us. We would still get those emails. They're still welcome to send that in. Just we wouldn't get it in a form of a compiled.
What's the deadline for getting it into the, right now, what's for board packet?
This is Jill Weinberger for the record. Our board packet typically goes out a week in advance of the meeting. So that's the official board packet. Anything that would be submitted up to the morning of when we're compiling that board packet, so a week before, we could incorporate. But then this is the secondary push of what else will go out between the time you receive your board packet and the meeting time.
And the meeting, that's, yeah, okay.
To clarify, I think there does need to be a cutoff time, and maybe until the item is heard makes sense, or some other time, but there's an administrative record, and it can't just be left open indefinitely.
Why not? Can't the public comment anytime on any item before a board? Or
Up
even
until
if-
that
Up
item is
until
heard.
you
Up
take
until that
action
item is
on
heard.
it, it's heard, but
Right.
not anytime you get, I mean, they could put it in after the fact, and that wouldn't have been before the board at the time you made the decision. That just create kind of a legal quagmire if you were being sued over any particular action.
Yes, I think we were in agreement, because then it would amount to like a rolling
She
administrative
was just saying,
record.
your idea though was that we only receive comments up until the item is heard. But they can keep submitting comments. after
Sure,
that.
okay,
So we
yes.
just clarify that.
That's all.
All right, so
Could we simplify it and just say up until whatever that deadline is, a week before or 8 days before the board meeting, all public comment received would be included in the packet?
well, they haven't seen the agenda, so they don't know what to comment on. That's the problem. So we post the agenda, whatever.
Well, and that's, I mean, because we would still get public comment even up to that point, right? So that would all be included in the packet. Anything received after that would be posted on the website.
Yes, the only issue, and I'm glad that Council for City of LA raised this, is that you want to be able to say that you considered the comments before taking action on an item. So if it's right up, if you allow website comments right up until the item is heard, you may not have had the opportunity to fully read it. So that's why it's good to give yourselves a cushion so that you can actually read and digest whatever it is that's sent to you. And then otherwise, there are alternatives to come in and just bring their materials and distribute it. But it kind of sets the boundaries.
Yeah, so if they don't get it in 24 hours, they gotta make their effort to come to the meeting. And I mean, it's a hybrid meeting, right? So it's pretty easy for them to make that comment, the regular platform. But otherwise, it's gonna, it's really hard for us to weigh into that comment.
I understand.
Since the packet will be out a week before the hearing, instead of 24 hours before the hearing, then do we want to make people calculate? Maybe we just simplify it and say by noon the day before the meeting, it'll go in, it'll be distributed, set that time, by noon the day before the meeting. Because they'll have had a week to work on it and come up with their comments, and then by noon gives the consultant time to
compile,
put those materials together to send to us, and then hopefully that gives us time to review this.
Because that is the trigger. When I send out the board packet that has the agenda, that is the trigger for public comment.
I think having, our meetings are at 8 a.m.
Well, this time it was, they've been 10.
I think we're gonna try to hold 8.
Are we?
We're gonna try.
You're bringing lunch. I think with the 8 a.m. start time, I would prefer like close of business.
On the day before.
Yeah, the day before, to give us the following day to review.
So
because
for
we
example,
may
you're
not-
saying Monday close of business.
Yeah.
But Monday was a federal holiday, so you do after Friday.
We would go back.
Okay,
to
No,
Friday.
we'd have to go to Tuesday.
Just say Tuesday
it
morning,
always a
right?
day
Tuesday at 8 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
24 hours before the meeting.
Tuesday at 8 a.m.
Okay, Tuesday at 8 a.m.
So it's 24 hours before the meeting occurs, right? In
Okay.
case we move the meeting time.
Yeah.
So just say,
And
let's just
also,
say 24
I'm
hours.
sure you're.
And then what I'll do is compile it and print it and then have copies available for anyone that comes in the meeting.
And just to clarify, that would be for a regular meeting, you're setting out a week ahead, but for a special meeting, those can be called in a much shorter timeline and circumstances may be. So it may be different for special meetings.
Okay, so clarify it's a regular meeting.
Should we set a time frame then for public comment for special meetings?
If you would like to, I think special meetings,
It's a 72-hour notice,
Yeah.
right, for special events. So even with that 24-hour cutoff, that would still be
Right.
okay.
I just want, there was a lot of talk about having a week that it would be up before, so I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, so then I would propose then the 24-hour cutoff time, right, for that to be posted and distributed to the board members after the 24, that's for both regular and special meetings. And then after that, the public comment could still be sent in up until the item is heard and acted on.
I think that may become very complicated, because if you're gonna have to keep track of what time you've heard every
That's true.
single item, it may be easier to cut it off at the commencement
At
of the
24.
meeting, so then you know this
Okay,
is the cutoff for all of them. Then anything past that would just be oral comments.
okay. What she said.
That
I did not write that down.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
And just so that the board knows, we have, in accordance with the Brown Act, the agenda goes to the city clerk's office to be physically posted on City Hall. So there can be no changes to that agenda. I didn't know it was the federal holiday Monday, but it was sent to the city clerk with an affidavit on Thursday. So just if for some reason you woke up and wanted to alter, you can't alter the agenda, at least in that regard.
Right, are we clear on the motion?
Is this a motion?
Do we need to act on this, or is it, because it's a policy we wanna?
We're gonna have to bring it back.
Right, I mean, it's, right now we have it agendized as an informational item, so, you know, it's
So
not,
we'll adopt it at the next meeting.
yeah, we can agendize it as an action.
Does that have to be done in the form of resolution? For that?
I mean, it's up to the attorneys, I'm not an
I think you
attorney.
could even just put it in the bylaws.
Oh, fine.
Room for another.
Oh.
We haven't got through the bylaws yet. Okay,
If you'd like to make a proposal for
Okay.
additional amendments to the bylaws during that discussion.
I
you
propose
can
a
consider-
resolution. I propose to have that as a resolution for the next meeting.
Well, you
That
could,
is a
there is,
rule.
that the bylaws is on the agenda today, so.
I know, but we never get, at least we gotta get some stuff. All right. Is there public comments on this item?
Yes, there are two public commenters, at least. So I will bring Mr. Davis in.
Yes, I expect you to public comments. However, I'm going to make them anyway. This agenda item falls into the category of cascade of errors because the agency didn't exist. The purported agency announced it would violate the Brown Act. This group is discussing legal matters and proposing to make legal decisions without having legal counsel for the purported GSA. You're not entitled to make legal decisions without legal consultation regarding the Brown Act, the Records Retention Act, and the Public Record Act. The latter of two you haven't discussed at all. The Brown Act requires public comments to be in agenda materials if they are submitted at a time defined in the act prior to the meeting. And if they are submitted at the meeting, they are still to be retained, but they are to be produced with the agenda if they are submitted at a time defined by the act prior to the meeting. Public comments are to be retained in accordance with the Public Records Retention Act. The head of an agency shall establish a program for compliance with the Records Retention Act. The purported agency does not have a head or executive director, and it has not complied with the Records Retention Act. No program for records retention has been established. Comments submitted prior to or at a meeting are subject to the Records Retention Act. Members of the public are entitled to visit the agency office to review records. This purported GSA has no office, and therefore the public cannot visit the office to review records. The purported GSA is required as a local agency to have a physical office to comply with the Public Records Act. When a public record, because I'm supposed to be able to walk into your office and ask for public records any day, any working hour of the week, yet you have no office. You're concealing these records from the public. No lawful GSA exists because this body does not have any legal authority. It did not enter into an agreement with, to establish a GSA pursuant to Water Code 10723.6. It has not adopted bylaws, yet it's operating under a rogue set of rules that have not been approved by even this group. The MOU uploaded to the Sigma portal by Sunny Wang said it's not a legal agreement. The County of Los Angeles response to what Mrs. Natoli said a while ago responded to my request asking for a legal agreement pursuant to Water Code 10723.6 that there are no public records responsive requests. Sure, you have all avoided your sworn oath to protect the Constitution of the state of California, and you should not show up again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. So I have two Patricia McPhersons. Who is requesting to speak? Patricia McPherson and Margot Griswold. I will first allow, and I'd like some clarification, whomever responds first. I will promote the first Patricia McPherson that I have. Thank you.
Yes, you have Margot Griswold, who was asking to speak on previous items, but you did not allow it.
I'd like to state, I'm going to interrupt for a moment. I can only take public comment from people who are registered. So Ms. McPherson, you appear twice on the attendee list, and I received a message from Ms. Griswold as we went to break. So I'd like to make sure that folks who are requesting comment clarify who they are so I can promote them in the meeting.
Okay, the first Patricia McPherson, the only Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. It has been difficult getting on and figuring things out. One doesn't typically scan onto a computer, which is what I am using, a laptop. So copy, paste directions are a little confusing in what this body has. But I would also like to know if this body will be reviewing, as Mr. Wang was talking about, what is on the agenda. We have been asked to provide information with regard to the dewatering aspects of Baiona, which gave rise to this issue in the first place, I believe. The fact that our comments were not being brought into any record whatsoever. And we were providing data of dewatering aspects that were ongoing, and diversion of groundwater that was ongoing. And that was not imported in. So we would like to be able to provide all of this, even if it's under public comment. We'd like to know, are you going to pay attention to public comment for that category itself? Because we can provide data that DUDEC, your contractor, refuses to provide and you refuse to ask for, including information that was provided at the last meeting that included the language that the court rulings explicitly said decertify the environmental impact report for the project entitled Baiona Wetlands Restoration Project, adopted on December 30th, 2020, clearinghouse number 201-207-10901. Rescind the project's CEQA finding, invalidate all approvals of the project, prepare and certify a legally adequate EIR if it chooses to proceed. I would ask, are you in any way or shape or form a responsible agency now per SGMA? Because the last part of the ruling said notify in writing all responsible agencies that have relied on the EIR to implement the project, that the EIR is now decertified. For your attorneys to tell you that that is in limbo is symptomatic of everything that has been done for the southern portion of this basin. They have not garnered the information that is readily available.
I just would like to remind folks that board policy on public comment material is agenda item D. So we are taking public comment germane to that agenda item.
Public comment was provided with regard to the decertification of the project.
Thank you. Time has expired. I appreciate your comment.
I'm asking specifically, do you input public?
We are now going to hear from Dr. Margot Griswold.
Hello, GSA. I guess I'm Dr. Margot Griswold, Patricia McPherson, number 2. At any rate, I wanted to comment, but it didn't get through on the last item. But You can see just from your own discussion and from what Patricia just mentioned, this information was sent to you. It is very confusing how we get through. Now you've clarified somewhat. We will have to prepare our comments according to what you just ruled on. But my question still is the notice of preparation from CDFW, comments from responsible agencies are due this Friday. Do you intend to comment and maybe suggest that CDFW pay attention to Sigma and to the Santa Monica Sub-Basin Groundwater Sustainability Plan with regard to saltwater intrusion, their evidence from the original EIR is quite flimsy. Are you commenting? We assume you are a responsible agency. Under Sigma, you should be, because this is affecting a groundwater dependent ecosystem in your subbasin. I don't know how we can make it more clear. Patricia read the ruling. I don't know why 5 months ago it was available. Really,
Dr. Griswold, do you have comments related to agenda item 8D?
well, it was put into your, public comments, written, sent, stated, you name it, we've done it. So I'm glad that finally you're clarifying that process, but it begs the question, based on our comments previously, are you commenting on the notice of preparation of a legally adequate EIR by CDFW for the Ballona wetlands, which is squarely in your subbasin? Not squarely, of course, it's not in the middle of your subbasin, which is probably why you pay no attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that is all the public comments.
All right, so I think we give direction on AD, come back, or GSA consultant to come back with a resolution on policy in terms of public comments. That's the question.
And Vice Chair Natoli, if I could just suggest, maybe it's just a subsection under Article 4, Section 1. Article 4, Section 1, subsection A, public comment, subsection Romanesque 1. That's where you put the policy.
For the meeting.
Public comment received 24 hours prior to the start of the board meeting shall be provided electronically to the board members. Public comment received less than 24 hours prior to the start of the board meeting shall not be provided to the board members, but shall be posted on the public website. Is that what we decided? I think that's what we decided.
Yeah. Up until the meeting starts, right, we'll be accepted up to the post on the website.
Sure.
Did you put, it will be included in the board packet if it's received,
24 hours before.
24 hours prior to the start of the board meeting, that public comment will be provided, shall be provided to the board members.
by email or
By
written?
electronic
By electronic.
distribution.
Okay.
Public comment received less than 24 hours prior to the start of the board meeting and up to the start of the board meeting. Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Chair. Is shall not be provided to the board, but shall be posted on the public website.
Okay, and then just for clarification, when we do the board packet the week before, is there a chance for someone to put something into the literal board packet 1 week before if they meet that What would that deadline be?
That would be 24
Yeah, that'd
hours
be
prior
prior.
to the start of the board meeting, so they could send it in any time from the time the agenda is posted online until 24 hours prior to the board meeting. We're going to have that week to,
Okay.
somebody sends you something and then an hour later that just says nuts, then, that's their comment and it should be in our board.
This is Susan Cola speaking for the city of Santa Monica. Just to clarify, if you do accept electronic comments up to the time of the start of the meeting and you don't consider them, it could be problematic for the administrative record. So it would be good to just make sure you're comfortable understanding that if you get them up to the start of the meeting, you would be expected to consider them before the item. So if you give yourself a little more cushion, then it would be easier. In other words, if you make the cutoff period a little further, or make it a firm cutoff period for electronic comment, 24 hours period, and then anything after that would have to be submitted in person.
Or maybe.
It may make it easier for you to consider all the comments, because my only concern is that if there is an item that requires a decision which involves a vested interest or property interest of some sort, you want to consider everything before you make that determination. And so it may be difficult for you to do that if you get written comments and, for example, they don't actually make verbal comments at the meeting.
So I think what you're suggesting is the 24-hour cutoff line is for all electronic.
Be a hard
Right.
cutoff for
Between
electronic comment.
24 hours, less than 24 hours to the start of the meeting, those have to be made public. They'll have to come to the meeting and make those comments.
Yes.
I'm fine with that, but I would just like to say that as a hearing officer, people show up at the meeting with comments, printed comments all the time.
Correct.
And I just say, I'm taking 5 minutes and I'm going to read this. So we have that option during the meeting,
Yes.
just to say we're taking a break to allow us the opportunity to read it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's at our own discretion at the board. We could
Yes.
do that. Okay.
But I think Councilor Cola, that's a valid recommendation. And I think it's something Councilor Tory brought up earlier. So I think that's a valid suggestion to incorporate into the policy.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, please? There's the GSA consultant, you guys are clear on the ask to be written up, okay? Thank you.
To the extent you're requesting that it be the bylaws, it probably should be attorneys, not doing it.
Okay.
I think we can provide that.
Well, I just want to make
in
sure
the
we're taking the
record.
notes right,
Oh,
correctly
yeah.
for you guys,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, anything else? Can we move on to the action items? Okay, agenda item 9A, board approval for the city of Santa Monica to issue RFP for a salt and nutrient management plan for the Santa Monica Basin.
Okay, so Alex Wade, supervising civil engineer for City of Santa Monica's Water Resources Division. I don't have a specific presentation for this action item, rather the draft RFP for the salt and nutrient management plan was incorporated as part of the board packet. Just high-level notes, the first 9 pages are the actual scope of work that we're really seeking your feedback on. The rest of it is general standard language that are included with all of City of Santa Monica's requests for proposals. In short, there are 7 different tasks included with the salt and nutrient management plan, and the completion of the salt and nutrient management plan, as was discussed in the October meeting of the GSA, is really intended to meet the requirements of the recycled water policy issued by the State Water Resources Control Board. And the completion of the salt and nutrient management plan is important as part of a management action as part of the GSP. Yeah, so that's really all I have to say in terms of the requirements of why this is being proposed. Then the last thing I'll say in terms of the funding for this item is that currently City of Santa Monica would be paying for the development of the salt and nutrient management plan. And as stated in the RFP, Santa Monica would be listed as a lead agency for executing this. However, there's a lot of coordination with all the members of GSA as well as the public in collecting all the information that's available in order to complete it. Unfortunately, with the GSP, a lot of the information that is normally included in a salt and nutrient management plan has already been done. So there's a lot of work that's being conducted, which is great, but this builds on the work from the GSP to also look at the assimilative capacity of the basin and the anti-degradation analysis of what additional contributions of eventually to recycle water or groundwater replenishment, as well as, industrial applications, and really managing the salt and nutrient loading on the basin to be protective of public health. So with that, I'll open for questions or comments or edits that you're proposing to the language of the RFP.
Or any comments, proposed edits to what's being presented on the scope of work?
Just a question, Alex. You mentioned funding for the development of the plan is going to be borne by Santa Monica. Is there any expectation that this GSA will contribute towards either implementation or any other aspect of the plan?
So that is an important piece that would be discussed as part of the development of the salt and nutrient management plan. A big portion of the implementation is roles and responsibilities of the various stakeholders. And that would be coordinated with the work of the selected consultant for this project, is to evaluate what the roles and responsibilities of each member agency to the basin would be responsible for, in terms of monitoring, in terms of additional implementation, various projects that you may be implementing in the basin and how that may impact. So we don't have a definitive answer at this point what that would look like. That would be fleshed out as we continue with the process.
Any other questions?
Mr. Vice
Vice
Chair, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Natoli.
You're going to be chair soon, don't worry.
No rush. So you'll be working with County Department of Public Works for the area around Marina Del Rey?
We'll be working with all applicable stakeholders, so that would likely include LA County Department of Public Works.
Likely or will?
I think that's part of the evaluation in terms of the kickoff with the consultant team is to evaluate who all the responsible parties are in terms of the basin, to then better target those responsible groups to help flesh out the report. So I can't say definitively at this point. It's really, we're gonna have to go through a data collection process to understand if there really is an impact from LA County Department of Public Works, and then go from there.
Not an impact from the County Department of Public Works, but an impact that would involve.
Excuse me,
the county
thank you.
department.
Yeah, thank you.
We love our engineers.
Yeah.
Don't want to blame anything on them yet.
Thank you for the clarification, exactly, that would involve.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem.
Director Singletary, any comments?
This is Director Singletary. I just had a quick question. Can you tell us what the budget is for this project?
Well, that's a great question. I think, at this point, we're anywhere in the range of 500 to 750,000, but because of the work that was already done with the GSP, that number could be significantly reduced. So we're really interested to see who proposes on this, and how much homework they do in terms of the existing documentation to help flesh that out. One of the big things that are included in this RFP is that whoever the selected consultant is would have access to the previous developed models. So that's a big leap to create a model. So anybody who has access to that would greatly reduce the amount of effort. So I hope it'll be less than the numbers I just said.
And what's your schedule for completion?
I don't believe we have a schedule for completion yet, because we wanted to see if there was any feedback that would be solicited from this board first. As included with the RFP, we have a tentative timeline of posting this RFP in the winter of this year. However, if there's limited comments, then we may accelerate that timeline and post it sooner. And if that's the case, then the timeline to complete would probably be sometime next year if we were to post in the next couple months.
Thank you. Do you have public comments?
We do. We have public comment from John Davis. I also have a handout from either Patricia McPherson or Dr. Griswold. So we will start with John Davis. Mr. Davis?
Yes, this body cannot approve or disapprove an RFP for release by the city of Santa Monica because it would be acting ex jurisdiction. It is not a basin-wide matter, and funding cannot only be provided to the city of Santa Monica. If this agency did exist as a legal entity, the funding would have to come through the agency itself. Approving this item constitute fraud. And may I say, there's no legal representation here. Susan Cole is a member of the public and is not entitled to enter into legal determinations while setting with this body. The fact the city shares a portion of the basin does not justify approving an RFP for release on behalf of the city of the city council. Such request is only under the jurisdiction of the city of council of Santa Monica and no other local agency. They are entitled to make a resolution and an RFP. However, they're not entitled to obtain money that would be intended for a GSA if one existed. A lawful GSA may only release an RFP for its explicit jurisdiction. The item is absurd on its face and must not be approved. Furthermore, Water Code 10723.6 prevents you from taking any such action because there is no legal agreement established to establish a GSA. It's further fraud on the public. The full reasoning for this proposal has been concealed from the public prior to this meeting to evade meaningful public comment. There are no approved bylaws setting forth operational procedures for approving the item, and none have been uploaded to the Sigma portal. This would be like putting the cart before the horse, and you cannot, just operate without any bylaws, and you can't operate without any rules. Just make them up as you go, which you are doing, and that's the end of my comment. Please do not approve.
Thank you. The next speaker is either Patricia McPherson or Margot Griswold.
Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition. This is a plan that appears to be for the city of Santa Monica, as was the plan that was submitted to DWR. The RFP went to DUDAC to explicitly deal with production wells in the city of Santa Monica. And with regard to a lack of any information, even from this plan, to deal with the higher surface aquifers that exist and are needed by a groundwater dependent ecosystem, which is the Basin wetlands. Everything that you had heard earlier from the DUDAC people was all about production wells. This is not just about drinking water wells. This is about the other aquifers that are necessary in order for a wetland to exist. This is about the diversion of the surface water and the surface water groundwater interface that exists, that DWR has now explicitly stated is a data gap that needs to be filled for the GDE. And they explicitly stated all of the data gaps that need to be filled in order to determine and protect Basin wetlands as a GDE. That has not occurred. We would like to see it occur. So this SALT plan, sorry, there's no time to talk to remember what the title is, but it would be important to pay attention to it from all of the aquifers for all of the basins. The term basin is continually used by this body when it is basically discussing drinking water wells of the city of Santa Monica. Drinking water wells are used through the Silverado aquifer. All of the aquifers need to have attention paid to them. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no other public commenters at this time. Discussion back to the board.
So I'll move to approve the item.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I'll do a roll call vote. Board Member Gonzalez.
Aye.
Board Member Welsh.
Yes.
Board Member Singletary.
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli.
Aye.
Chair Wang.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is 9B, 9C, approved cost sharing plan between GSA member agencies. This is also continued from the October 18th board meeting.
All right, I think, I'll just start on this item. I think this is a revisiting from last item. I heard earlier from City of Beverly Hills from Director Welch that the discussion that they had with their city leadership was 2% of all costs. I believe prior discussion with other members, we were, at least from my recollection, we were looking at the equal split between the 5 member agencies on administrative costs. So I guess we'll begin there as sort of a quick recap on there. We also have information on equal share between the 5 agencies over the 5 years on administrative costs. We also have a split based on land area, which I believe is where the 2% was stemming from. There was also previously a discussion of all pumpers, essentially that would be all on Santa Monica as production. So that's a quick recap. Wanted to hear from the board here, additional thoughts from anyone on that, or any new ideas. You guys want to start?
I'll be brief.
Director Gonzalez.
So there are 2 options laid out here. There was a 3rd option based on pumping. So again, the way we sort of saw it was there's extremes, one based on land use, which DWP would bear essentially the full cost. The opposite extreme is based on pumping, therefore Santa Monica would bear the cost. The City of LA is proposing an equal split. So not where one agency has to bear the full burden of the administrative costs, but rather an equal share based on the fact that we have equal representation and voting on this GSA. So our position hasn't changed. We still would like to cap City of LA's contribution of 20% of the costs shown here. And that hasn't deviated from the last meeting.
Just to clarify, you are referring to just administrative costs, right? Okay. Vice Chair?
Mr. Chair, the county agrees with the City of Los Angeles. We believe it's fair to have an equal split between member agencies.
Any comments, Director Singletary?
Yeah, this is Director Singletary. I think given Beverly Hills' direction to have it be based on land area, that is how Culver City would to split the costs as well.
I'll share some thoughts that I have. I guess maybe you may get somewhere, maybe not. But I think from us, since we do have equal share vote, I do agree with City of LA and LA County in terms of splitting the administrative cost equally, right? Just administrative costs. The implementation costs, as we talk about the projects, the compliance with the GSP requirements, I think what I would propose there is that cost is borne by the pumpers, right? Because the reason behind there is the people who are extracting, producing groundwater from the basin are the one that's impacting the basin, right? Depending on how much we draw. So it is our best interest to make sure we're in compliance, we're managing the basin sustainably to do that. So I guess my proposal would be that the 5 agencies split the administration costs equally and implementation costs then to be borne by the pumpers, right? The pumpers could include private pumpers as well, as they also could have an impact on the basin. So it's not just the municipal entity that's pumping, it's everyone who's pumping and betting from that has to chip in to make sure we're protecting this basin. So that is sort of my thought on how do we get to an agreement on how we split that cost. Right, and I was just doing kind of some rough calcs. For example, if we look at 2% of all costs, if we look at the cost of an injection well, it could be anywhere from $4 to $6 million in this area. Right? So if you look at that 2% cost, it's not actually too far off of how much you would contribute in 1 year administration cost. Right, so that's something to consider for those that might be more favoring the land as the contribution to total cost, right? Because it could be more or less, but I would say right now it definitely covers your share of administrative costs for the year. Right, so that's sort of my thoughts on the table That's something that maybe we consider and each of us go back to our leadership to discuss that. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add on to that. That's a very important point. We just heard today that there could be a $500,000 cost to prepare the salt nutrient plan. 80% of the agencies here are not participating in that. Every agenda, there's some injection well going in or some monitoring well going in, and we just say, thank you, Santa Monica, for paying for that. So not having the responsibility for those costs and having responsibility equally shared for ensuring that the basin is, the groundwater is managed sustainably. The county believes that we're all in this together, and as we have an equal voice, we are equally responsible for making sure that the basin remains sustainable and that it's right and fair that we split the cost equitably. Again, thank you for paying all that hardware.
So for, just to clarify, the equitable from the county side, it's all cost, or is it just administrative?
Administrative.
Okay. I just want to clarify that.
No, thank you for taking those wells.
So, yeah, so it sounds like LA County is open to the idea that the implementation cost can be spread amongst the entities who pump from the basin.
Sure.
And Chair Wayne, just to expand more on the point of the cost, so we're making the distinction between administrative costs. Now you talked about implementation costs. Are there other costs that are not a part of these buckets that we should be aware of, so that all of us kind of go into this knowing what the full cost of this could be for any of us?
Yeah, I guess we would need to define what they are, right? What's administrative, what's implementation. Right?
And just to expand on that, the buckets were identified when we went to city council, and one of those buckets was legal costs.
I guess the question is, where does legal costs lie then, right? Would that be administrative or implementation? To be discussed further.
Legal costs,
Yeah.
neither.
Well,
Neither here nor there.
Because of the legal structure under the memorandum of understanding, each party bears its own costs in that way. So the GSA does not pay for any of our individual costs, and so it's basically at no cost to the GSA.
So is it fair to say that legal component is outside of the administrative costs and implementation costs we're discussing here? In
For
terms of cost
DWP,
sharing?
it needs to take the contract to its board, so the administrative cost would be whatever the DUDEC contract was for administrative.
Right, but I was trying to split out the legal bucket from.
So
what we're
legal would
discussing here.
be completely separate.
Out of what we're discussing.
Yeah,
here.
should
Okay.
the GSA ever decide it wanted to hire outside counsel, then those would be the legal costs, but otherwise,
Right, and that would be
each
a
party
contract
bears its own costs.
by all of you.
Okay.
So to try and clarify what administrative, it's running the meetings, it's the time that Dr. Gold spends putting together agendas and responding to public comments.
No, not that part. That, I think is borne by Santa Monica, right?
Well, that's what we're discussing, right? That's part of the administration costs. We've been talking about cost share on that. The administration of the GSA essentially is like running the meeting, preparing stuff like this.
This is DUDEC's contract cost, right?
Right.
Up on that, there's a table.
I guess the breakdown of that cost.
Should it only, so time spent by city of Santa Monica.
That's not
staff
rolled in there.
Who are tasked to the GSA?
It's
or-
not included.
It's not in there. It's only
Okay.
it's solely GSA
Okay.
consultants cost.
Okay, so it's only,
Third-party direct costs is
Okay.
what we
which
apparently are
means
talking about.
we're saving even more money.
Yeah.
We don't have to pay, I'm sure Dr. Gold is very, expensive.
Under the MOU, each party agreed that it wasn't going to bill for its internal costs or its own staff cost.
Right, so that is essentially just the GSA consultant's cost, and that includes running the meeting, the annual reporting that's required to meet the DWR requirements.
5-year evaluation costs as well.
So I think we could provide the details of that. I don't know if it was shared previous, I think it may have been, but we could provide that again to all the board potentially, right? So we could look at what those costs were, but that's what that 887, 580 of 5 years came about.
And does that cost cover some of the issues that were raised today, either the comments from DWR or the additional analysis that would support the Hillcrest permit application? Is there possibilities for that number to go up or down that we should be aware of before we seek board approval?
I can, with direction from board and okay, I can certainly give you the entirety of what's in the scope in this and the contract, so that you are well aware of what these numbers cover. To your direct question, it would not cover the Hillcrest evaluation. I think that was discussed as a separate funding source that would come from the applicant for well review. It does cover the 5-year evaluation, addressing DWR's comments, the annual reporting, those sorts of things.
Cheap at half the price.
But if there were special scopes of work to be added as a result of technical questions, you would have the ability to authorize that or not authorize it. And it would come through a change order to the contract.
Is there a possibility of budgeting a certain amount for technical questions that comes up that the board can then authorize task orders?
Like a
A
contingency.
contingency, yes.
Well, in some sense, but so then, I mean, just like a limited, not a lot, but a
Yeah, so
limited.
it's like,
So if it's like a $10,000 task order, you're not then
have to go back there.
to go back, yeah.
Yeah.
So a
Sure.
limited, not implementation, but just administrative for things that do come up. I mean, that's something you can discuss amongst yourself, but just.
Is that something already in the contract though? Isn't there some standard language in contracts about
We,
unforeseen?
we do have that, but that's not rolled into the administrative costs.
Yeah, that wouldn't be treated as an unforeseen condition. It would be a separate scope of work.
Foreseen.
Yeah, unless there was contingency and we put it in the contract as contingency, which could happen.
Yeah, and to clarify for the board, the reason I'm asking is the way the MOU is set up, and I know for DWP, is that anything that the board agrees on here, DWP will have to go to its board and have that contract approved. I assume each of you have your own internal processes. So to the extent there are foreseen costs that we could include, that would make sense.
There is a way to do that through, it is still a contingency, but you could authorize the additional amount within the contract through task orders. So you could set aside a certain amount and say, subject to task orders issued by the GSA up to an amount not to exceed blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And that would be then included in the overall amount. It would be kind of like an allowance almost.
So is that something you want to give directions to go back and, incorporate that sort of task order contingency in that cost and for administrative, because you are going back to seeking approval for some time period, right? Is that the direction we want to give this staff to come back, or?
I don't know if you need to come back. I think you can discuss it and decide whether that's something you want to do today, and it could be,
Yeah, we'll just do something.
unless the contract itself is what's being approved. then-
I guess
Is
it's
there any suggestions on how much contingency we should add?
Well, where do I start?
Our next meeting.
And for us, we have similar contracts like this even now. We
It
have
would be
a-
owner's contingency,
We have a contingency that we
right,
authorize by task order.
but the contingency would belong to the GSA, the
Yeah,
contract
yes,
administrator.
yes,
And that ranges from 10 to 20%.
of the contract amount.
Correct.
Well, 10% would be $88,000, right? Oh, no, that's
Well,
over
the-
5 years.
And it's split 5 ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these costs, and I apologize, I'm showing the agenda, so I can't actually dig into my contract right now, otherwise I would have been researching this furiously while you're talking, but, these costs do exclude some costs that the city of Santa Monica will bear independently that are in the contract, so I'd have to go back, I don't have that at my fingertips right now, the total contract amount is more than $887,580. So those costs have already been pulled out, and this is specific to administration and implementation of the GSP. So when I'm not talking about implementation of projects from the GSP, just implementation of the GSP itself. So I guess I'm loath as the consultant to suggest a contract amount. I think that's probably best for your board to discuss.
I mean.
It's not on the
10%.
agenda anyway, so I
Yeah.
think right
Okay.
now, it's really, what's on the agenda is the cost sharing arrangement. And then we could come back to you with specific amounts.
I think it is germane to it because when you're discussing about how you're gonna split the cost, you need to know what the costs are.
Well, I guess we could at least decide on what that percentage is, right? Maybe 10%.
Yeah.
So anywhere from 10 to 20.
I agree with the 10%.
10%. Extra
So
contingency.
if we're talking just 10% or touching $1 million to be hypothetically split 5 ways, so we're talking 200,000 per agency. So assuming that was the estimated total cost. How is that arrangement between us gonna be borne? Because that's the estimated cost. And again, our position still wouldn't change, our contribution would be up to 20%.
I think what we're talking about then, right, is we know that 887,580 or that 177 right now per agency is a known cost. So that will be just an even split every year. If we divide that by 5, and then that extra 10% contingency is what we hold to authorize the consultant if that work is needed. Right? So that extra 10% is a contingency that we go back to our governing bodies to get that approval. Right? For essentially to give us that authority to authorize that 10% if needed.
We might have it administratively done differently. Mechanically, I would go to my board asking for up to 200,000.
Right.
As a one-time ask.
Correct. Right. Essentially, that's what we would do too, is we ask for that authority. Right. So we're good on sort of agreement on the 10% contingency on that. I guess we still need to discuss if that's what we go back to.
Again, I'm a little concerned that we're straying beyond what the agenda item is. It's cost sharing, it's not determining what the contingency amount is. Whatever those expenses are gonna come back for approval.
Okay.
But I think for purposes of discussing what the ballpark is, so you guys understand, the board members understand what the share potentially could be, that's the framework for that discussion, but I don't think we're approving anything beyond what is the cost sharing arrangement, which is on the agenda.
And really, this would just be direction, because ultimately you're gonna need a legal agreement
Right.
that will come back to the board, and that's,
Right.
so yeah.
You know, folks, it's $35,503.20 a year.
What is that?
That's your cost per year.
For that number up there.
177,516 divided by 5. That's 5 years. Divided by 5, it's $35,503.20 a year.
This is Director Singletary. For us, it's really not about the dollar amount. It's really for any regional project like this, we've always split it by land area with our watershed management groups, regional stormwater projects. So that's, there's a precedent for splitting up costs like that amongst groups. And I think that's how Beverly Hills Council decided. We haven't taken it to our council in Culver City because I don't have firm direction like that, but there's a precedent definitely in Culver City for that type of split.
But if I'm a director Singleton, the question, I believe that split is that land area, but then I guess the component here too is the equal weight of voting, like, 'cause that's sort of implementing, I forgot, there's like overall governing body that then you have a vote on.
True. I mean, we could, I guess, change the voting percentages as well. That's not really an issue. But yeah, the dollar amounts are not as, I don't think that's really the sticking point. It's more of the precedent for these types of payment for these types of groups. We need to have all 5 of us in agreement, so it sounds like at this meeting, we can't do that anyway, at Beverly Hills direction.
No, I think it's to probably discuss and decide and then go back to see what our respective leadership says, whether it's, yeah, I don't know if you guys go back, it's gonna change anything or not, you know.
So being the only one that's got formal direction from our city council, and we could discuss amongst ourselves if the other members say, this is how we feel we would want to move forward, I would take that back to my city council.
Right.
Present that, let them make a decision if they want to move forward as a consensus here or somewhat consensus, and bring that back to the GSA.
Director Welch, I would appreciate that very much.
But do we have, it sounds like we have 3 wanting administrative cost share equally split. I'm hearing then the agency with the interest in pumping would bear the cost of whatever operational or design and construction costs.
But I guess I could provide some background on that, because that's just some research that at least I've been looking at other GSA that's trying to move forward, right? So how they would recover that cost is through like a pumping extraction fee. Orange County Water District, for example, right? How they manage the basin, they have an extraction fee so that they manage the basins for the entire county, right? So that's sort of a model a lot of other GSAs are also implementing. So that's kind of where I got that idea, is that, yeah, we split the administrative costs because we have equal votes to make decisions. The implementation, should be on those who are impacted. So what's going to come down the road is we also have to then come together and decide on what that extraction fee may be, how that's going to be structured. But we need to agree upon sort of the structure first before we take those following steps to get there. And we're kind of behind the 8 ball as some of the stuff we had to deal with already, but we need to start developing these type of things to be more functional for GSA too, and to enforce that. So that is the first option, is what I'm suggesting is to split administrative costs equally amongst the 5 agencies, and the implementation costs will then be more down the road by the pumpers. And then what was on the table before was just split administration costs evenly amongst the 5, or splitting all costs based on land area. Right? So I think those are the 3 options in play.
And because I'm going to be asked, because I was directed to include legal costs, would that be a discussion item at a later date? Are we saying we're not including that in, we're only talking about administrative and the operational costs?
Right, my understanding from the legal staff that's in here is that we're all responsible for their own legal costs, our own agency. So there is no split, you just responsible.
So I would respond to my city council that the direction is all agencies are paying for their legal costs.
Their own, right, their own share. Right.
And for clarification, for Culver City, you're in line with the 2% administrative costs.
Well, there's
or
9.
sorry, percentage.
Ours is 10, yeah.
10%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Administrative costs.
Okay.
So I will go back to at least my city council and get direction based off of our conversation today.
Well, I guess is there amongst the 5 of us at least, is there a prefer between the 3? Right, to kind of say, what the other agencies are leaning towards, I guess, right? Would they ask you that as a?
Yeah, I yes. So if you three are in alignment, you gotta tell me what that alignment is.
So you know my option, all right, so the first one, the administrative costs evenly, and then the implementation costs on the proper.
Same with the county.
LA, same with LA, Culver City, I think you're with the land area.
Definitely.
Okay. Okay, so we got two based on land area, but your land area, that's for administrative costs, right, not for all costs, that's like Beverly Hills.
Correct, yeah, we haven't had that discussion with our council.
Okay.
We don't even know what funding source, how we would pay this, even if we, whatever split we take to take the council, it may be an issue either way.
So you'll be the same position essentially as Director Welch from Beverly Hills, and taking those three options that, you know, there's three agencies for one option and then the other two on the table.
To take that to council?
Right, for your discussion.
I'd prefer to take, to have direction to take to council. I don't want to have that type of discussion. We don't have those sorts of workshop sessions that Beverly Hills does with our council.
So your preference is that we potentially decide on something and you take that one option to city
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're not really able to decide unanimously, so I don't know what the best next step is, but it's kind of where we stand. I could get direction from our city management and go from there.
I think that's
visit next meeting.
Okay. All right, I think that's pretty much our cost share item. Other comments?
We do have public comment, yes. We have Mr. Davis, followed by Mr. Davis.
Yes, I'm here. Is this group field the details of this agenda from the public prior to the public meeting? It appears to be evading public scrutiny of the item. It's what you see on the agenda has no details whatsoever. You were talking about, numbers. There are no numbers on the agenda. So it's being concealed. And you don't really want meaningful public comment, otherwise you would provide that information to. This body doesn't have the legal authority to enter into a cost sharing agreement because it did not establish its taken Water Code 10723.6. It did not enter into a legal agreement to establish a same of that code. The code requires an MOA, MOA, not an MOU, a JPA, or other legal agreement. As the MOU this body cites to states, it is not intended to be a legal agreement. Water Board's attorney Tina Leahy, as you all know, indicates there is no codification of an MOU constituting a legal agreement or other legal agreement. There is no definition in the government code of an MOU being equivalent to a legal agreement. An apt analogy is regurgitating the MOU is like claiming the US presidential election was stolen. Repetition does not make an MOU a legal agreement. The MOU uploaded to the
Mr.
Sigma
Davis,
portal.
may I ask you to really align your comments with the agenda item, specifically
I did.
the cost sharing agreement?
Okay, I have to repeat this for you. This body does not have the legal authority to enter into a cost sharing agreement because it did not establish a GSA consistent with Water Code 10723.6. You have interrupted my testimony and removed my ability to speak, and I'd like that time back. Could you acknowledge that, please?
Yes, but you were not removed from speaking. I just asked you to align your comments specifically with the agenda item. I'm also, a point of clarification, all of the materials are included on the website and in the agenda packet, and therefore available for review by the public. You may go ahead and resume.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. The MOU uploaded by the Sigma portal by Sunny Wang said it's not a legal agreement. The County of Los Angeles response to a request for public records pursuant to the Public Records Act dated August 3, 2023, which you all have, says that there are no public records responsive to your request for a legal agreement. City Attorney Susan Cola verbally indicated that no legal agreement could be reached because the cities did not want to give up control. The recording is on YouTube and you've already all been provided a link. There are no approved bylaws setting forth the operational procedures for approving this item, and none have been uploaded to the Sigma portal as required. Stating that there are GSA members constitutes knowledge and intent to defraud the people of California. Furthermore, approving this item would be an unlawful use of public funds. Therefore, the motion should be denied, even though a denial would be meaningless, but it would show the intent to try to move this group in the right direction. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. McPherson?
Thank you, Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition. First off, I would like to clarify with regard to any cost sharing, Mr. Wang's comments that were repeated by several of you was that the city of Santa Monica is the only pumper. That's inaccurate. The southern portion of the basin is being pumped. It is being pumped by Playa Vista. Dudek affirmed the fact that the water board has pumping that is ongoing for their groundwater remediation. She provided no volumes of that. That water is sent out to sea and or to sanitation. So getting back to the purpose of this group is to perform best management practices and to protect the groundwater and surface water interface and to protect groundwater dependent ecosystems. So when in thinking of cost sharing programs, what harm is coming to this groundwater dependent ecosystem when you're not paying any attention to the volumes of water that are being pumped and diverted, and you are continually being told that the city of Santa Monica is the only pumper? There's also 2,700 barrels a day of brine water that is being pumped by SoCal Gas for their underground gas operations. Granted, that's not from the Silverado, but it affects the area. The King Harbor area had subsidence of 2 feet, nearly the same as what we have at Bayona right now, in that same subsidence bowl area, that millions of dollars of damage was done during a storm event because of the subsidence. No one is paying attention to the basic geology that exists here. No one is paying attention to the surface and groundwater interface here and all of the ground
Person, may I
fresh
ask
water
you
that
to
is
align
being
your
diverted
comments to
from
the
there.
agenda
So
item?
this is in direct alignment with the costs. These are costs that are going to be coming up with damage that even the Coastal Commission cited happened to the hydrology of Bayona for the diversion of the water. Do you want to pay extra costs for fixing something when all you need to do is gather the information to try to protect the area? This is what DWR has asked of you, and you continue to pretend that didn't occur. It did occur. They acknowledged the comments that we made asking for this evaluation, and they've asked for the evaluation to occur. So therefore, any cost share that you have, if you're looking for grants from DWR has already said they may not provide any if you do not adhere to their recommendations. Please adhere to their
Your time has
recommendations.
expired. Thank you.
So I'd like to just correct, I guess, for the record. When I stated there were only pumpers, that's between the municipal pumper in the basin amongst the 5 agencies that's sitting here. I did acknowledge this private pumping occurred in the basin, so I just want to correct that for the record. So,
Mr. Chair, I understood that Santa Monica is not the only pumper in the basin. I mean, we've been discussing Hillcrest.
Right.
So I think we're all aware that the city of Santa Monica is not the only pumper in the basin.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Oh, another clarification is this table was included in the board packet materials.
Understood, yeah, the
Posted
cost
online.
sharing is online.
It posted online as well as sent by email to all stakeholders.
Thank you for that. Any more public comments?
No.
All right.
Do we have a motion though on
There is
this?
no action to be taken, I think. We need to develop additional info, go back to our respective city leaderships to get input and to take action. So there's no action on that item.
So perhaps the motion is to continue the item.
Exactly, I'd like just some closure, if that's okay.
Is that your motion?
I move that the item be continued, this item, what are we on,
9C.
9C?
9C, yes.
Who are we, why are we here?
Yes.
Be continued to the next regularly scheduled GSA board meeting.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Natoli. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chair Lang. Board Member Gonzalez.
Aye.
Board Member Welsh.
Yes.
Board Member Singletary.
Yes.
Vice Chair Natoli.
Aye.
Board Chair Lang.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
On to the bylaws.
On to the bylaws, and these are amendments to the previous bylaws.
I think the red line, I mean, we all have the red line, right? So are we, just clarification before we discuss this item, is that, are we voting on each of these separately? On the Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4?
Maybe the bylaws as a whole.
As a whole?
I will note there are some blanks that need to be discussed and filled in.
Yeah.
That generally the rotation of the chairship, I think that's the main point.
Right,
You
I
could
thought it was
take-
filled in at one point.
No.
You could take a straw poll.
I'm sorry.
Susan Cole for the city of Santa Monica, because there are numerous pieces within the overall item of the bylaw amendments. You could take a straw poll on each one of the components, which is not a vote, it's just an indicator, if you wanted to proceed that way.
And then can we parse out, if we say can't come to agreement on Roman numeral 2, can we at least take action on 1, 3, and 4 and correct those and then
If you all
continue
agree
discussing
on
that?
it, you can.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Do you wanna
then
start?
Director Welch, yeah.
Okay, so, but Article 6.
Yes.
Section 1,
Yes.
the representatives, the city of Beverly Hills does not see a need to identify each party individually. So I recommend that we remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just allow for there to be an appointment each year of a chair and vice chair.
You don't mean rotation?
I'm just saying there's no need to identify in this document a designated rotation of agency. We recommend just leaving it up to a vote each year on a chair and vice chair and move forward that way.
I would suggest that a rotation is a little more fair, and then we don't have personality contests. And if we just designate by agency, it's just everybody knows what's coming up. It's a set rotation. We don't have to take a vote. Just seems easier if it's a set rotation, and it would be by agency, of course, not by name, by individual name.
Yeah, based off of the, again, looking at jurisdictional area, involvement, and impacts of staff time, our direction is that we leave it open to an appointment each year.
So what if Beverly Hills were removed from the rotation? Would Culver City participate in the rotation?
If Beverly Hills was removed, Director Singletary, I do echo Director Welch's comments. I think maybe for different reasons, if we actually outline what the structure is and the timing for each agency, other issues could arise that we may want to vote each year on who is the chair. Somebody could move from one agency to another. They might be chair 2 years in a row, and just there are other things that could happen, over the course of 5 years here than thereafter. Just my initial thoughts. But also with the percent land area does kind of align with the, let's say, the ability of staff from Culver City as well to participate meaningfully in the chair position. Again, that might change with different staff in the future.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
What are your duties? What do you end up doing?
No different than what you guys do.
What do you do as chair?
No different than what you've already observed, as far as my duty as a chair.
So during the other 89 days,
The duties of the chairperson are explicitly set forth in the bylaws. I can read them for you.
that would be helpful.
The chairperson shall preside at the meetings of all board and perform duties consistent with procedures outlined herein. In the absence of the chairperson, vice chairperson shall execute the duties of chairperson. Chairperson shall maintain order, decorum, and decide questions of procedure according to Robert's rules of order, subject to the right of the board to make the final determination. The chairperson shall call the meeting to order promptly at the appointed hour and conduct the meeting as prescribed by these procedures and the laws of the state of Melbourne.
That's when Miss Gray does half of that.
So to me, that doesn't sound very onerous. You're just running the meeting.
Correct, that's essentially it.
We defer to the chair. You sit in the middle.
I just look around for comments and input.
How does that sound? It sounds to me, let's go in alphabetical order. Beverly Hills would have to be 1, and then Culver City 2, LA 3,
I think it could be 1.
and then Santa Monica 4, and then the county 5, because I'm the vice chair who's county right now, would have to take over for 2024. So if all you're doing is running the meeting, does that sound like, okay, maybe it won't be so bad, and maybe you'd want to still participate? Because then it doesn't
It's
matter.
the experience of a lifetime.
Well, again, it's not really the personality, it's the agency, so it may not be me here, it could be somebody else. Maybe you don't want to be the chair, and you'd want to have the opportunity to vote at the beginning of the year for that person, but I don't have a strong opinion on this language, but I did want to echo what Director Welch was saying, and I do see his point.
I have a potential suggestion, which is we could frame it so that if the rotation party declines, then there would be a vote.
Yeah,
And initially it was set up as a vote. That's how this board was.
Right, I do remember that. Does that sound like a reasonable compromise?
Otherwise, we just retain the rotation?
Yeah, only if that person.
Yeah.
I think
So-
that's a reasonable solution.
I'm willing to discuss with my management the compromise and come back. So if we want to pull that portion.
So we'll
out
continue,
For now.
yeah. So that would Roman numeral I, right?
Yeah, Article 6, Section 1.
Oh, that's it too.
Or, yeah.
Oh, that's it, yeah, so we'll pull that one out to be continued, that section. What about any,
Mr. Chair, there's the addition about public comment that we considered earlier during the discussion on public comment.
That's a good point. It wouldn't have to be a resolution if we're coming back.
Right.
that would probably be more after this, right, direction of staff too.
Well, we could direct them today to, we'll come back and work on 6, but in the meantime, Article 4, Article 6, Section 1, but in the meantime, add the provisions on public comment under Article 4, Section 1A.
Or add Section 3.
Yeah.
Romanesque.
I will say, probably should have caught this before, as they stand today, the bylaws require you to elect a person at the last meeting, which you did not do, so we'll need to agendize that for the next meeting, particularly if this is the result. So that will need to go on to the next board meeting agenda.
Okay.
So may not, this year it will, unless there's a change, there will probably need to be a vote for this year, and then it would by next year.
Okay. So all those things, the direction maybe come after this for a after we get done with these items, then we'll give the direction to staff to add that. The public comment, how we maintain that for the meeting. So I was just trying to get through this, and then we'll direct staff to add that to this for the next time. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
There's so many edits. Let's see what's the next. Are there any other comments or on the other amendments to the bylaw? So I'll propose, one that I was gonna propose on Article 8, Section 1. It states that the functions of the secretary of the board will be performed by an assigned employee of the city of Santa Monica. I was simply gonna add at the end, or GSA consultant, just to provide flexibility.
Vice Chair Natoli, I would support that.
Any other comments on the rest of the edits to the bylaws? None?
Can I just give you some legal context for the approval of the bylaws, just because I know there's been quite a few comments on it. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
So, under California Water Code, section 10723.6, is that a combination of local agencies may form a groundwater sustainability agency by using any of the following methods. 1, a joint powers agreement, or 2, a memorandum of agreement or other legal agreement.
Sure.
The MOU is a legal agreement entered into by your 5 respective agencies. At the time it was entered into, Sigma sets forth quite an extensive process for the formation of a GSA. There's quite a few public hearings, procedures, whatnot. I can tell you, I know that DWP and the other agencies published in local newspapers when they were considering the MOU, and also gave their regular Brown Act notice. So this was a public process for a legal agreement, which ultimately formed the GSA. The MOU allows the GSA to create bylaws that are consistent with the MOU. So that is where we're at today, and you previously did adopt bylaws. These are now just amendments to them.
Good. Thank you for that clarification. So I'll move, I guess, to approve the amendments to the bylaw.
Well, we have public comment.
Oh, I forgot, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. It's late in the day already. Mr. Davis would like to speak.
Well, dang, another public comment. Sigma did not review the MOU. The deputy attorney for the Department of Water Resources said they did not review the MOU for determine if it was a legal agreement, because they expected this group to only upload a legal agreement. It is now being reconsidered by the Department of Water Resources attorneys and the person that's in charge of compliance with Sigma. And I can't remember his last name, but his first name is Anthony. This is not just regarding this entity. There are probably other entities that tried to use an MOU, which is not a legal agreement. There's no definition of an MOU being a legal agreement. It's not codified, and it's an attempt to thwart Sigma and to avoid its provisions by having GSAs that don't have bylaws, like you guys don't have any bylaws. You're operating without bylaws and allowing them to thwart Sigma for private interests like the Playa Vista project. I agree with the rotational chair if this GSA existed, which it does not. It's only fair to the public. A vote is unnecessary. A quarterly rotation would be appreciated. Part of the current chair's efforts were to claim an MOU established a legal agreement for this body to exist. This represents the point at which all the matters of legal non-compliance began. The question about the bylaws is, what rules are you operating under if you don't have any bylaws? But again, getting back to the purported MOU constituting a legal agreement, there is no leg to stand on. Again, the Department of Water Resources did not review the MOU to determine if it constituted an other legal agreement or not. It's not codified. It's not defined in the government code. And just because there's silence does not mean that it's okay. It is unlawful and it's fraudulent and it's probably being performed by other purported GSAs in this state, and it will be investigated. The people deserve to have a legal agreement so that we know that we have a voice in the matter. By not having a legal agreement, you have eliminated our voice. Though you pretend to listen to us, you're disregarding us. You don't want us to talk to you, and you especially don't want us to bring up entities like private pumping at the Playa Vista project or the extensive pumping that's going on under the buildings at Marina del Rey with temporary permits, construction permits that are only designed for short periods of time and not for prolonged periods of time after the pumping has ceased and the construction has, after the construction has ceased. So please, please do not believe that an MOA constitutes a legal agreement. If you look at the
Could
MOA,
you please wrap
there
up
are
your
no
comments,
obligations.
Mr. Davis? Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have a request at this time from Ms. McPherson. I just want to ensure, excuse me, that there isn't a comment from her before we leave this item. Thank you, Ms. McPherson. I will allow you to speak, and you will have 3 minutes.
I have no comment. I just, other than supporting what was just stated, and that we would like to actually see this resolved openly. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'll move to amend the GSA bylaws. I guess there's two motions on this. The first motion is first part is to continue Article 6, Section 1 to the next board meeting. And then I move to amend the rest of the bylaws with the one proposed addition on Article 8, Section 4 to add or GSA consultants.
Proposed addition, Mr. Chair.
There's
a public meeting.
Oh, that's right. And also for staff to come back to add to Article 4? Article 4 meetings on how do we manage public comment. Thank you.
Second the motion.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second. Director Singletary.
Aye.
Director Welch.
Yes.
Director Gonzalez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Natoli.
Aye.
Chair Wang.
Yes.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, that was the yes to both motions, which was to continue the item.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is solicitation of items to be discussed at the next regular board meeting. Do we have any?
The election of the chair.
Are there any other items aside from the election of the chair
And vice chair.
and vice chair?
So the chair is not the vice chair, the way that the bylaws are currently set up? I thought the election was just for the vice chair.
It says the vice chair becomes the chair in
Oh, that's right.
2024.
So
You're the chair.
you get to run it. Just have to elect the vice chair. That's correct. Thank you for the clarification, Director.
Yes, thank you, Director.
You had to point that out. You know, the hardest part is remembering all the motions and the details. Any items you guys want? Are we good? No other direction on future items?
And then we can adjourn at your discretion.
Yeah, we'll adjourn the meeting at 12:14.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
What's that left?
Over already?
Are you still here?
I'm a bud for pain.
I'm gonna grab